Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Mayor Christine Robinson. Welcome to the June 16th, 2020 West Grey Council meeting. I'm calling the meeting to order, recognizing that all members of council are present due to their log on. We do have a quorum. We are using audio only to conduct this electronic meeting. Video is not possible at this time due to a limited bandwidth in some areas of West Grey. Bandwidth is challenging our ability to do a complete video broadcast. So for now, we will be sharing today's agenda and there may be some presentations on the screen as well, in addition to the audio. So we have called this meeting to order. Item 2, a moment of reflection. All members of council, as well as anybody listening in, let's take a moment of silence at this time. Thank you very much. So this agenda has been circulated. The meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the West Grey website, www.westgrey.com. The technology of this meeting is being managed by staff, so please refrain from clicking any buttons throughout the meeting. Before we continue, I'd ask our Recreation Supervisor, Cody Hewlett, to give an overview of some of the other key points, recognizing that when we do come back into open session after the in-camera session, we'll go through that point again. So with that, Supervisor Hewlett, please.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. If you get disconnected at any time during this meeting, you can dial 1-647-558-0588 and enter the meeting ID 826-371-81907. Both members of council and staff have been briefed on the various features of the Zoom meeting software and will be using the raise their hand function to speak. Members of council will be using the green checkmark button to vote in favor of a motion and the red X button to vote against. Following a vote, each member of council will then be called upon verbally to confirm their vote for the benefit of any guests who have called in rather than joining us using the online software. If you have any technical issues throughout the meeting, you can send a chat message to myself, Cody Hewlett, Recreation Supervisor, and I will attempt to assist you. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Hewlett. Appreciate all of that information. On item 3, members of council, declarations of pecuniary interest. Are there any? I am not seeing any on screen. At this point, I also check with Supervisor Hewlett. Do you see anyone, members of council, on screen? Fair enough. Thank you. Members of council, before we go on to item 4, our closed session, I would ask that we go to item 16. Item 16 is an addendum on tonight's agenda, and this one is dealing with proposed bylaw 48, 2020, a bylaw to appoint a clerk for the Municipality of West Grey. So we do have a motion before us, and I will ask CAO/Deputy Clerk, Madam CAO Laura Johnson, to read the motion, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The motion before us: be it resolved that bylaw number 48-2020, being a bylaw to appoint a clerk for the Municipality of West Grey, be now read a first, second, and third time, passed and numbered, and that the said bylaw be signed by the Mayor and the Deputy Clerk, sealed with the seal of the Corporation of the Municipality of West Grey, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Thank you. Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Hamilton, are you moving this motion?
Councillor Hamilton, I move the motion.
Councillor Townsend, are you seconding this motion?
Councillor Townsend, yes, I second the motion.
Thank you. Any questions or comments with regard to this motion? If so, please signify by raising your hand virtually. I am not seeing any questions. So at this point, I will call the vote. If you are in favor of this motion, please signify with a check mark. If you're not in favor, please signify with an X mark. So I will begin. As Mayor Christine Robinson, I'm voting in favor of this motion. Councillor Townsend, please state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Townsend, in favor.
Councillor Hergert, please state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Hergert, yes.
Councillor Shea, please state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Shea, yes.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, please state your name and how you are voting.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, in favor.
Councillor Hamilton, please state your name and how you are voting.
Counselor Hamilton, yes.
Councillor Hutchinson, please state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Hutchison, in favor.
Motion carried, and might I say unanimously. Congratulations, Madam Clerk. Welcome. You have a bylaw dealing with your appointment. Thank you, members of council. So at this point, I do want to say thank you, Madam CAO/Deputy Clerk, for assisting with this meeting. We will now ceremonially turn it over to our clerk to handle that. Would that be appropriate, Madam CAO?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. All right, members of council, we are moving on to item 4, which is a closed session. Madam Clerk, could you please read the motion?
Whereas the Municipal Act of 2001, Section 239, Section 2, as amended, authorizes councils of municipalities to close to the public a meeting or part of a meeting for dealing with certain subject matters. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey is now go into a closed session at 6:06 p.m. with the CAO, Clerk, Director of Finance, Treasurer, Director of Infrastructure and Public Works, Errol Cheslin, Municipal Solicitor and Administrative Assistant to the Clerk's Office, to discuss an item that relates to personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and for the purpose of receiving advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose.
Thank you. Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Hergert, are you moving this motion?
Councillor Hergert, yes, I will move this motion.
Councillor Hutchinson, are you seconding this motion?
Councillor Hutchison, I second the motion.
Are there any questions or comments with regard to this motion? If so, please raise your hand. All right, seeing none. On the vote, if you're in favor, please signify with a check mark. If you're not, please signify with the next mark. I will begin. As Mayor Christine Robinson, I'm voting in favor of this motion. Councillor Hutchinson, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Hutchison, in favor.
Councillor Hamilton, state your name and how you are voting.
Counselor Hamilton, yes.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, in favor.
Councillor Shea, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Shea, yes.
Councillor Hergert, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Hergert, yes.
Councillor Townsend, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Townsend, in favor.
The motion does carry. We will go in camera. There should be a prompt on your screen that indicates that we will be moving over to the breakout room. See you there. Thank you. Hello and welcome back to our June 16th, 2020 West Grey Council meeting. For members of the public that are listening in today and those that will be listening through audio at another time. We did call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. We had an in-camera session. We are now going to be in the public, so I'm looking to the clerk to read the motion to rise.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby returns to open session of Council at 7:01 p.m.
Thank you. Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Hergert, are you moving this motion?
Councillor Hergert, yes.
Councillor Shea, are you seconding this motion?
Councillor Shea, I second the motion.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify with a check mark. Those opposed, please signify with an X mark. All right, so as Mayor Christine Robinson, I'm voting in favor of this motion. Councillor Townsend, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Townsend, in favor.
Councillor Hergert, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Hergert, yes.
Councillor Shea, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Shea, yes.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, state your name and how you are voting. Do we have an indication that Deputy Mayor Hutchinson is on the line via telephone? I'm just checking with staff now. Yes. Deputy Mayor, we are taking a vote to rise and report. Did you hear the motion?
No, I got kicked again, Mayor Robinson, but
Okay, what I'm going to do, Deputy Mayor, is I'm going to have the clerk reread the motion.
thank you.
The motion is, be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby returns to open session of Council at 7:01 p.m.
Deputy Mayor, state your name and how you are voting.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, in favor.
Councillor Hamilton, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Hamilton, yes.
Councillor Hutchinson, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Hutchison, in favor.
Motion carried. We are in public session. I will say as mayor that the only reason that we went in camera for was the only discussion that we did have in that closed session. We are now moving on to item 6, which is our comment period. Supervisor Hewlett, have we received any emails, phone calls, or correspondence submitted in our Dropbox pertaining to this comment period?
In advance of this comment period, members of the public were invited to submit their comments or questions via your Dropbox, email, or phone. We did receive one request to speak during comment period from Mr. Rfps, and I believe he is on the phone line with us, so I can unmute him at your request.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Rfps. Welcome to our June 16th West Grey Council meeting. We are in the comment period. I understand you have a comment for Council.
Yes. Well, I have a comment and request. Just, I appreciate this time over the air. I'm not familiar with this type of communication, but we'll try and work our way through. I would just like to make a request that I have a flag in my yard. It's a straight pride flag, and people have commented, and they would like one, and they would like to know if perhaps the municipality could display a flag of this sort at the West Grey Municipal Building. It's gray, black, and white with the male and female emblem. If any member of the council would like to view it, it's in my front yard, and Laura has my phone number, so she could give that to you and contact me to come and see. So,
thank you. Yep, please go ahead, Mr. Rivas, and then I could respond to you.
Yeah, okay. So I just feel, you know, being a resident of West Grey, I'd like to have equal exposure to all West Grey citizens who may have a flag of some sort that they would wish to fly. Okay, that's it.
Well, thank you, and thanks for being here. I am familiar with that type of flag, and thank you for coming forward and asking for council's consideration. So we would be, Madam Clerk, at this point, for Mr. Rivas's request, I'm suggesting that it would be written correspondence so that council can address it in writing, but so it will be submitted and included in an agenda, and then council can have full consideration of that. But I wonder if you could comment on this, please.
Oh, you want my comment?
Oh, Mr. Rivas, I'm asking our clerk,
okay.
our clerk who's Clerk Sharbak, to provide a response.
Through you, Your Worship, I agree that correspondence, putting the request in writing so it can be included in a proper council agenda would be a great idea and probably the best way to have this debated by council. Or Mr. Rivas, if you would like to submit something in writing, I would encourage you to include a picture of your flag, or perhaps you'd like to attend council as a delegation. Either way, it certainly gets the matter on the agenda for council to consider.
So I wonder, Mr. Rivas, if there could be an outreach to our clerk tomorrow or whenever you wish, and you could have a further dialogue with her in terms of a pathway forward for this to be addressed by council. What do you think, Mr. Rivas?
Yes, that's okay. No problem. I have another commitment in the morning. It would be in the afternoon.
That's just fine, whenever it works at your convenience.
So I would call the municipal office at 369-2200 and talk to who? To Lori?
No, this would be to our clerk, but our clerk is going to suggest the coordination of this. Please go ahead, Clerk Sharbak.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. Mr. Rivas, would it be okay with you if I called you in the afternoon?
Yes. Would you have a particular time?
Whatever time
because
you would like.
Because this weather's nice. You know, I could be cutting grass. I could be weeding the garden, what have you. What did you say we make it 2 p.m.? Is that a good time?
2 p.m. sounds good. I'll call you at 2 p.m. tomorrow, and we can chat about how we can get this item on an agenda.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your time, and thank you to council to listening to me.
Well, thank you very much for your participation in this electronic method of our meeting.
Yes. So can I stay on the line and listen to the rest of the meeting here?
Yes, you certainly can. We would welcome that. All right, Supervisor Hewlett, is there anyone else that is in the queue for the comment period?
At this time, I have received no other comments.
Okay. All right, so let's move on. We are now on item 7. That is public meetings. There are no public meetings for this particular agenda. We are now on item 8, part 1, consent agenda. Madam Clerk, would you please read the motion?
Yes, through you, Your Worship. The recommendation is be it resolved that items A1 to D7 inclusive contained in part 1 consent agenda be adopted as presented, and further that authorization be given for the action to be taken as may be necessary to give effect to the recommendations contained therein.
Thank you. There is a question, but I'm going to say I would be looking for a mover first and a seconder, and then ask for any questions. So with that, Councillor Hergert, are you moving the motion?
Councillor Hergert, yes.
Councillor Townsend, are you seconding the motion?
Councillor Townsend, yes, I'm seconding the motion.
Questions or comments from members of council? If so, please raise your hand. Councillor Hamilton.
Excuse me, thank you, Mayor Robinson. Yes, I'd like to lift the correspondence for discussion later in the meeting. There's 2 pieces of correspondence, Grey Bruce Pride flag raising request and Spruce Ridge Community School graduation banner request.
Okay, so we could include that as exceptions to the motion. Is that correct, Madam Clerk? And we can deal with it after we have after we deal with the motion, the consent motion, we can deal directly with these items. Is that correct?
Yes, through you, Your Worship. I can add that to the motion with the exception of items C1 being Grey Bruce Pride flagging raising request and C2 being Spruce Ridge Community School graduation banner request. So
Okay.
that everything else on the consent agenda is approved. Those 2 items will be lifted and they will come back for council's consideration later in the meeting. I believe it's agenda item 15 under new business.
Okay, that it would be under new
To suit our
business.
procedural bylaw.
Perfect. Okay, as the mover and seconder, that's just a tweaking on that motion. Are you fine with that as the mover, Councillor Hergert?
Yes, I am fine with that.
As the seconder, Councillor Townsend?
Councillor Townsend, yes, I'm okay with that.
Are there any further questions or comments with regard to this motion? Seeing none, on the motion, please indicate in favor with a check mark. If you're not in favor, with an X mark. So as Mayor Christine Robinson, I'm voting in favor for this motion. Councillor Townsend, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Townsend, in favor.
Councillor Hergert, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hergert, yes.
Councillor Shea, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Shea, yes.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, in favor.
Councillor Hamilton, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hamilton, yes.
Councillor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hutchison, in favor.
Motion carried. Those 2 items, Grey Bruce Pride flag raising request, as well as the Spruce Ridge Community School graduation banner request, will be entertained under new business. If you could please clear your dashboard, we will continue on. That takes care of item 8. At this point, we're on item 9, part 2, regular agenda. Item 10, communications from mayor, members of council. I will begin. I want just a couple things. With regard to a COVID-19 update, all facilities remain closed until further notice. However, staff are answering emails and calls and critical projects are moving forward. Council and committee meetings are being held remotely. We are starting to ramp up our advisory committee meetings, beginning at this time to hold remote meetings for the Economic Development Committee, the Accessibility Committee, and the Traffic Working Group. Parks, green spaces, boat launches have reopened. The outdoor tennis court and basketball courts will have reopened, and signage outlining restrictions on team sports are posted. I do also want to say that last week the province announced a regional approach to reopening Grey Bruce campgrounds, childcare centers, salons. Churches may open with restrictions. Bars and restaurants can open patios with physical distancing measures. Public gatherings have been bumped up to a maximum of 10 people. As well, we received a media release from MPP Walker announcing family visits to long-term care homes will be permitted under some restrictions. Playgrounds and playground equipment remain off limits. Our recreation team will be opening the pool in order to circulate the water and service system. That's our wading pool, just for clarity, but it is not expected it will open to the public this summer. Our recreation facilities are currently closed. Under phase 2, community centers may reopen for internet access, counseling groups, and a few other limited restrictions. I'm certain that our representatives on the library will talk about library opportunities And Dr. Era, who is our Medical Officer of Health for Grey and Bruce, strongly recommends the use of non-medical masks when shopping or in situations where physical distancing is difficult. I would also like to say that when you do go out for shopping, that you shop local. That would be really great. So at Grey County, as of May 28th, Grey County Council approved a motion that I put forward dealing with broadband to have a call to action for our provincial government to champion the implementation of broadband for unserviced and underserviced areas in Grey County. We also received correspondence back from MPP Walker with regard to my May 19th, 2020 correspondence dealing with broadband. And MPP Walker speaks in terms of some funding that is being invested for infrastructure and improved broadband and cellular service. He also notes that as part of a $190 million project to bring high-speed internet to thousands of homes and businesses throughout southwestern Ontario, Southwestern Integrated Fiber Technology, fondly known as SWIFT, has awarded contracts in Lambton, Wellington, and Norfolk counties, with good news coming soon to our region. The only other comment I'd like to say is that West Grey Summer Camp is opening up. West Grey staff have worked with Grey Bruce Public Health to create a program that offers even greater safety to our campers. Some important measures are in place, and if in terms of extra staff, increased cleaning, modified programming, 2 separate groups and equipment, additional education and awareness, and contactless drop-off and pickup. Registration is currently ongoing, and for questions and for registration, please contact Cody Hewitt, Recreation Supervisor, phone number 519-369-2200, extension 240. That is my update. Deputy Mayor, do you have any update?
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. That's quite a few things there. I just a couple of the things around that I was going to suggest you've already covered, which is great. Thank you very much. I guess one of the things I'd really like to emphasize is just thanking all our people and citizens in the community for just practicing the social distancing, and they've been following it, and the proof's in our numbers. So I know everybody's starting to wearing them down, and it's getting on their nerves, but they're hanging in there. And I just think a shout out to everybody for doing their part. And I'd just like to welcome our new clerk, and that's about it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to Councillor Shea now. Do you have any updates for us?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Robinson. Thanks for all the news about the openings and the relaxings. I'm sure we're all very overdue. I noticed that you mentioned that the tennis courts are open, and I'll just remind people that at the Durham tennis court, pickleball is also an option. I know there are some pickleball players who are very keen to get back at it, and it's nice that we can provide that service. I also want to applaud the efforts of Recreation Supervisor Hewlett, who has reopened or has opened the community gardens near the Durham Arena. So there's 8 garden beds that are available for people to register and book for the season and plant. And I know that he had a very short time frame to make that happen, and he made it happen. So good work to you, Director Hewlett. I also want to mention that I had opportunity last week to attend an event in Owen Sound, which was a Black Lives Matter event led by local young Black resident, Jill Lyman, who wanted to organize something to address systemic racism. And there were a huge turnout. I would say there were in the thousands. And a lot of the signs that were represented, expressed sympathy and alliance with the Black Lives movement, but there was also Black Lives Matter movement, but there was also a lot that, indicated support of the Indigenous movement and people of color. And I've slowly and recently been coming around to a different recognition of the importance of identifying and acknowledging systemic racism, and that is that we live in a society where certain segments of the society, specifically white people, are the beneficiary of an imbalance, an unfairness, and that those of us who are in that section, which I think includes everybody who's present at the table at this meeting, we didn't ask to be the beneficiaries of this unjust system, and we didn't do anything that put us into this, and we didn't do anything bad or wrong, and that there's nothing that we need to feel guilty about just because we are the beneficiaries of an unjust system. But we do have a responsibility to try to make the system a little bit more just. So that's the commitment I'm making to myself, to, without feeling guilty or penitent, to try to see what I can do to make the system work a little better for the other racial groups that I'm sharing the community with. So I just wanted to express that and share that with you and the community. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Shea. Councillor Herger, please.
Well, thank you, Councillor Shea, for your pledge. And I myself, I find myself being the same beneficiary of several, just, you know, I didn't ask to be born this way, and neither did anyone else. So we're all members of the community, and as such, we need to look out for others' interests. And so I agree to take a pledge of being thoughtful and mindful of other people's situations, and to make the change when I can make the change, to make the change. So I applaud your efforts and your action towards looking out for others. On another note, yes, Councillor Shea also mentioned the community gardens being opened, and I'm quite pleased with that. So West Grey is offering, and I would like to call that a package deal. This year is a project for the chickens in the backyard. As well, we have the community gardens. So I hope that people are able to take the opportunity and plant and grow locally here in West Grey. And so thank you very much to our manager of recreation there, Cody, for being able to implement that very swiftly. And I was also curious if there was a possibility of a media release on that. Not sure, maybe that, if I could ask for a media release, or if—
Councillor Herger, are you speaking to a media release for the community gardens?
I am specifically,
we will
yes.
absolutely do one, yeah.
Very good. Okay, and then just be kind and support local. Let's think of everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend, please.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to comment that I'm really pleased that the Economic Development Committee is restarting on June 24th. We have some outstanding business to complete with the CIP, either as it is or with revisions or whichever, but at least we will be proceeding on that. I certainly hope so. Also looking forward to the Traffic Safety Working Group getting back in motion, which I hope will happen soon because we have ideas already to implement. We've seen a couple out, like with the signs for speeding and whatnot, just to give people a hint. And there's a lot more to follow, and this will give us a chance with the assistance of the Director of Public Works and Infrastructure, Director Serwinski, and the police chief as well, who are both involved in that committee. As previously mentioned, there is a Spruce Ridge Community School graduation happening on Friday, June 17th at 7:30 p.m. at Durham Conservation. And I know the Lions are volunteering quite a few people and whatnot in that as well. If anyone finds they have time to help out, I'm sure there's things to do, but it should be great. And I'm really glad that the students are being recognized despite the fact that they can't have the regular type of graduation event. The other thing is I know that there's a 90th birthday coming up because I think the call's gone into the municipality to get the processes defined and see if either the police, firemen can participate as well. And my last comment, I also have a comment on the racial unrest. And I just want to warn people, we have to be really careful if we label one particular segment as more important than the other, because if you talk about, say we need to give the whites a fair whatever, and I'm picking that because that's probably the least we need to be worried about right now, and I don't want to offend anybody, but the real issue is if you put one group above the other, you're then offending the others, it seems, in our politically correct environment. So I just want to caution people that it's good to be passionate and it's good to try to improve. What we need to remember is that all lives matter, not just one segment, but all of them. And our solutions have to keep that in mind, and I certainly hope we do. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Councillor Hutchinson, please.
Yeah, Councillor Hutchinson here. Yeah, so a couple things that maybe haven't been mentioned yet. Our library is open for curbside pickup. And that may change. We have a meeting tomorrow, actually. So we'll see where we're going with that. Just to reiterate what I think Councillor Townsend mentioned, the graduation, there is a Grey Bruce graduation acknowledgement going on June 24th in the evening, where they're actually putting out posters, and all people in Grey Bruce that are graduating, whether it go the kindergartens right through to university, can excuse me, be recognized by being on the street and honking and waving and whatever they may wish to do. But so that's to go along with the Spruce Ridge one, which is actually this Friday, but that's the 24th. I just wanted to mention that we have mentioned about the tennis courts in Durham being open. We're getting that up and going, and the basketball court I don't think is functioning unless it happened today, but hopefully soon. I just question about some of our parks, and maybe our mayor can clarify this, but I know there's been some confusion with parks, Bentic being one. I'm not sure what the junior farmers in Normanby, Newstead, and so on. So parks, small parks are open or are not open?
I'm going to, parks are open, our public spaces are open, but I'm going to have Supervisor Hewlett provide a little more detail on that, Councillor.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor. To first address your question about the basketball courts, the nets over by the Durham, the ones in Durham by the tennis courts, the hoops were put back up today. And for the smaller parks, as I refer to it as Junior Farmers and the Benchick Park, we are in the process of reopening them. They should be open within the next few days. We were focusing our efforts on our larger parks, and we are now in the process of slowly reopening the smaller roadside parks.
Okay, good. So yeah, so I wasn't at the basketball courts today, but yesterday, and so that's good to see that they're up. So I'm just with the smaller parks. I know there was some curiosity about when they're opening and are they open, because a lot of those boat launches and some of the parks all go together, right? And boat launches are open on the Saugeen River according to Conservation Authority. I just want, so the other thing that I wanted to bring to people's attention is public washrooms, for example, porta potties, probably won't be out there this year. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So just in case people are looking for those. And the other thing, what about ball diamonds and soccer fields?
Director Hewlett, could you respond?
So at this time, our green spaces, which includes our fields, is open. However, they are closed for team use. So if individuals want to go and kick around a soccer ball, let's say, they are able to do that. However, we cannot have teams practicing or large group gatherings. We're still asking that people maintain their social distancing while using our green spaces.
Okay, so no organized sports per se at this point.
That is correct.
Okay, I think that's it for me. I just wanted to clarify some of those points. So thank you very much for all your efforts on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go to Councillor Hamilton, I do see Councillor Hergert's hand up. Is this a question you have?
I do have a question, and it's just further clarification on our swim program that we have in the river. Will we continue with that program this summer, or is that off?
So Supervisor Hewlett, do you have a comment with regard to that one? Have we, that has not been addressed at this point, or have you addressed it?
Thank you for your question. And to respond to the swim program in the river at the Middle Dam. Most likely, given the guidelines currently put in place, we will not be able to operate the program. In media releases from the province, it appears as though swim programs may be able to operate or pools may be able to operate, but when you actually dig into the guidelines, unfortunately, registered swim programs, cannot operate. So at this time, we will not be able to operate our swim programs. However, if we see a drastic opening and things change, hopefully we will be able to get something together.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hamilton, please.
Well, there we go. Just waiting to be unmuted. Thank you, Mayor Robinson.
Thank you.
And yeah, all our councillors have covered all the ongoing events, so thank you for that. And just wanted to add that my husband and I, we did attend the Solidarity March for Black Lives Matter in Owen Sound, and it was very thoughtfully organized. Physical distancing was observed. Everybody had masks, they had masks available, and the Owen Sound police were on bicycles. So it was very careful planning led to a peaceful and a safe march. The march ended at Harrison Park for a gathering where we listened to community members share their experiences with racism. And we then all took a knee for 8 minutes and 46 seconds in memory of George Floyd, who was killed while in Minneapolis police custody. And that 8 minutes and 46 seconds of perfect silence and reflection is a very long time and will be unforgettable. So I will be bringing a notice of motion later tonight in response to this experience and an effort to combat racism. Thanks, Mayor Robinson.
Thanks. We'll have that addressed through notices of motion. Thank you very much. Okay. That completes item 10. Item 11, delegations. There are none for this agenda. Item 12, business arising from the previous meeting. Is there any? Are you aware of any, Clerk Sharbeck?
Thank you, through you, Worship. No, I have received no correspondence or indication there's anything from the last meeting.
Very good. Thank you for that. So we are moving on to item 13, staff reports, beginning with our chief building official, CBO Shipwreck, and this is dealing with the Police Service Headquarters RFP. So as per our normal procedure when we're dealing with reports, we'll have the presentation from the author of the report. So we'll have CBO Shipwreck provide his presentation. I'll look to the clerk for a motion, mover and seconder, and then deal with any questions or comments. So CBO Shipwreck, are you available for your presentation on this staff report?
I am, Madam Mayor.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you, members of council. I put this report together with a lot of help from the remainder of the staff committee, our CAO, Director of Finance, and our police chief. We spent quite a bit of time last week reviewing RFPs. As you can see by the list, we received quite a few, which is really awesome. A lot of interest in this project. So we reviewed all the RFPs as a committee. We came together with a short list of our top 5 that we like the best. That was all done prior to viewing the price. We did a 2 envelope system, so we reviewed all the presentations, reviewed all the requirements that we had asked for in the RFP, and sort of came with and we sort of ranked our top 5. Plus, we ranked all the applications, but we really focused on top 5 for the most part, and then we reviewed we opened the fees, and the Director of Finance was able to put together a little spreadsheet for us, and we reviewed all the fees. And you can see that the total costs were a part of this report. You can see there is a very wide range of fees, as I expected, as we expected going in. But we really, when we put this presentation together through, the RFP together, we presented to council, a month or 2 ago, and we really we took what was said at that meeting, and we discussed it with the Saugeen Shores CAO and some other police buildings, and we came to a conclusion that the best approach was really to, try to look for that, include that project management as part of the RFP right up front. And we really thought putting the project management and the architect, although not necessarily one person, but in the same, the same company was a benefit. So we received, a variety of applications. Some applications we received from project management companies that were hiring an outside architect to perform their duty. Some we received from architects, and they were hiring a project management company outside to do that part of the application. And there were some larger companies that were able to perform both duties in-house. In the end, the application from Formworks really it did rise to the top, was definitely one of our top 5 right from the beginning. And they had, a large number of projects dealing with police buildings. A lot of them were for similar sized municipalities and, similar sized buildings that really, we thought would be, comparable to what we were looking for as a municipality. And in the end, their price ended up being the lowest, which was a definite benefit as well. But we really did like them right from the beginning, and the price was just a bonus. So if anybody has any questions, I can do my best to answer.
Great, thank you for that. At this point, Madam Clerk, could you read the motion?
Through you, Your Worship, be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby awards RFP 2020-02 for the design, build, project management services for West Grey Police Service Station to Formworks Inc. Architect for the amount of $244,000.
Is there a mover for this motion? I'm seeing Councillor Hutchinson with a hand. If it is for moving, it is a check mark. So Councillor Hutchinson, are you moving this motion?
Yes, Councillor Hutchison moves the motion.
I'm going to say, Deputy Mayor, are you having difficulty? Is it a question, or are you moving the motion or seconding this motion? Because you're on the telephone. I just want to make sure.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. I had to go through the *9 to raise my hand to second the motion.
Okay, so
I'm not sure how I will create a check mark, but
that's
that
okay.
is all seconded.
All right, so we'll work with you on that. So you are seconding this motion. Thank you. I will just keep an eye that your hand up on the phone may also mean mover seconding. That's fine. All right, so we have a mover and seconder. Any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Hutchinson?
Councillor Hutchison, yes, just curious, under the Formworks architect, they have completed, it says they've completed 4 new and 35 renovations of police stations in the last 10 years. Do we know if any of those are local by any chance that might be comparable to our area?
CBO Shiprock?
I'll have a quick look and I can get back to you on that. They are a company out of Barrie, and I believe the closest one was just like a Simcoe County area, but I can confirm that and get back to you.
Okay, that's fine.
Anything further, Councillor?
No, that's fine.
Okay. CBO Shiprock will respond back to that inquiry. Councillor Hergert and then Councillor Townsend.
Yes, thank you. So I was hoping to just clarify for all involved that we, the West Grey Council, provide the building for the police service board, right?
Yes.
And so that being said, I thought we had given direction for our CAO to go have conversations with Saugeen Shores. And basically we were already provided with the drawings. This would be like, here's the drawings, go ahead and amend them if you need. And I haven't seen those drawings to say, that's what we want. Council hasn't really considered all of the options, all of the opportunity that we have when we build a brand new building, especially of this size. I see the timeline says 2020 July to start. We haven't consulted with our community even about what they expect to see from their tax money. I think our timeline's a little off. I think we're rushing it to award a tender tonight. I think that we have a lot of work to do within our community to establish exactly what we want before we're hiring an architect to build us something. So I imagine some of the work that would begin in July is a bit of a consultation with staff or with the police service about what would be required.
Well, we did give direction to staff to let the RFP, and
Yes.
that's exactly the next line in process is for the RFP to be awarded. But Madam CAO, have you had some dialogue with the CAO from Saugeen Shores?
Yes. Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, the CBO and myself spoke with Saugeen Shores I spoke with him on one occasion, and the CBO joined me on a second call. So we had done that. We have, and as our CBO had indicated, we incorporated some of his suggestions into the RFP, which was to request proponents to put some thought to a project manager. And that is exactly what we're receiving in our package submitted by the Formworks architect. So we've captured that piece, which was the direction or the suggestion of council. The direction that we had is, as you said, Madam Mayor, to issue the RFP and take it to award. Community consultation, you know, I mean, there is an opportunity for that, but I think we need to be mindful that this is a pretty specific sort of build, and there's quite a number of requirements that are mandatory.
Right, so we're right on line for the timeline and process. So this is why the RFP, and it's most encouraging in terms of the amount in comparison with the other RFPs that were received. So it's in line with the process. There, as you said, there will be opportunity for citizens to comment on this exciting project.
So I guess just to drill a little deeper on the Saugeen Shores, was that to me seems a comparable police service? And you said you've taken some of those suggestions. Is it not that we could use the drawings that they prepared for a police station and update those drawings? An architectural, you know, have an architect update those and continue on with project management.
Madam CEO, do you want to respond first to this?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to point out that Formworks has built similar stations to the Saugeen Shores building, and you know, it would be one thing for us to have the drawings, but fundamentally we need to award this to an architectural firm that can help us through the process. So that is our first step.
So did we have a conceptual drawing of what was needed prior with one of these groups that is now included their name as a submission? May I say the name of the company that we already have?
I think, Madam CAO, if you could just go through the process so that it's very clear in terms of the council asked for this RFP to be let and what it is specifically through the RFP that we are receiving. Madam CAO?
Yes. Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. The RFP was drafted a number of years ago, 2 years ago, but that was prior to us having acquired any property. Yes. So now that we have the property, we have not asked for any specific conceptual drawing because we need to begin with an architect who will examine the property and have a look at the best spot, and you know, their expertise will help guide us through this. We were before council, we made adjustments to the RFP following that, the suggestions and some direction, issued the RFP, and this is why we are here tonight to announce how the RFP played out and our recommendation for awarding.
And how it will be addressed on the specific property for this building.
So I also am curious about the reserves that are mentioned, and I was, for the last few years, it was $75,000 a year was saved up for this police building money, $75,000 a year for 5 years we were saving up. So maybe this question might be to our Director of Finance. I don't see a breakdown of how much we have from that budgetary savings, $75,000 a year, and the delineation between development charges. I see that well, first off, the 5 years at $75,000 a year would be $375,000. But this includes the police station reserve and development charge reserve that relates, to the police portion, being a total of $405,000. So I feel like that's a little shy from where I thought we would be starting as well.
So our Director of Finance and Treasurer, Director Mighton, can respond to your inquiry.
I can't hear, sorry.
Oh, Director Mighton, I'm wondering if we could just have your mic unmuted, please.
Yes, sorry. So we have not been putting away $75,000 for the last 5 years. We have for a few years, but not for 5 years. So the balance is not at $300,000 in that account. We have spent a bit of money from that reserve over the years as we've attempted to look into other options as well. Our current budget for this year had $75,000 from the tax levy. We were budgeting to use what was left in those reserves from the police building reserve. And then we were using what we were eligible for under development charges. And then the majority of it, if the construction was to happen this year, was going to be loan financed. We had estimated, without knowing any real details about the construction project and that type of detail, if it was a $6 million project, we'd still be getting financing for over $5 million of this project. We do not have sufficient reserves to pay for the total all-in costs of the design, management, and construction. So it is looking at that. For this tender, this RFP, we have sufficient between the $75,000 tax levy and then a combination of some of those police building reserves and the development charges reserve to adequately fund the RFP for the the portion that would be spent in this year. And then looking at the project timeline, it'll be a 2021 when we get more construction costs in there. But there's a lot of work to be done before that happens.
So
Thank you, Director Mighton. Anything further, Councillor Hergert?
Yeah, so I was curious, how many years had we saved the $75,000 a year specifically for the police station reserve?
So with regard to this council, or any other time?
Even prior, because I think we
so
about
with regard to this council, Director Mighton and any other previous council, are you able to respond to that? And she's looking it up at this moment.
Okay, so I would like to put a motion to defer forward. I believe that we need to, and I understand the process of letting the RFP go, and I also understand the process of awarding the RFP to a certain corporation. I don't believe that we've done our own due diligence within our community to know that they just want a police station and they want it for the minimum amount and they want exactly what it basically needs, basic needs.
Director Mighton, do you have the response to the inquiry?
Thank you.
So I have the total in the reserves was $220,000.
220,000. And how many years had we saved that 75,000?
I will have to go back and take a look at that as well. I just have the reserve balances at my fingertips here.
Okay.
Is that something you're able to get this evening? Okay, thank you for that.
So I did put forward a motion to defer on the awarding of the tender.
Yes, is there a seconder? Okay, Madam CAO, sorry, not Madam CAO, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. A motion to defer to what date or meeting?
Councillor Hergert?
I would say until we're satisfied on what we propose, we have an architect draw out. I mean, that could be as fast.
But that's, Councillor Hergert, if I might, that's the whole purpose of this RFP to be awarded, is exactly what you're asking, is what we need to approve this RFP so that we can have that done. So that's why we're in the process. Just to answer your question on that.
Well, so might I ask, what will the consultation be with our community as it relates to design? I mean, I don't feel like our council has talked about what we require it to be. We're the ones providing the building.
Okay.
For the
so,
service.
Very good. So we'll have your questions asked before we pursue the motion. Clerk Sharbeck, is that appropriate, or do we need to follow through with the?
No, the motion to defer. I mean, if we could have a collective meeting to discuss that with our community, that could be for September.
Okay. Clerk Sharbeck, please.
Through your worship, a motion to defer should have some very clear timelines on it and a date, or at least a date range of a couple of days to come back, so that the item isn't lost. But it does matter. I don't have the RFP in front of me, but there'll be very specific timelines how long these prices hold. And if we're letting this pass, there's some steps we need to take to formally end this RFP if we're not accepting any in that time frame. And I don't know what the time frame is. I haven't seen the RFP, but we need to be careful that we're keeping our side of the bargain with the RFP, I guess.
Sure, and I think with that, Madam CAO, could you please address that?
We're here to award it.
Madam CAO?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Our clerk raises a very good point. I don't have, this is the one disadvantage not being in the office to have everything at my fingertips. Perhaps our CBO has the RFP with him, but the purpose of the architect is to help us and our community put the vision together. It's a police station that's going to have specific needs and legislative things that we need to do. The other pieces are what the architect's role would be assisting us with. I see Mr. Shipwreck has his hand up, so would you mind, Madam Mayor, if I defer it over to him?
No, I think we're seeking the answers to these questions before we move on. And Clerk Sharbeck, that is very appropriate to do at this time. I just want to ensure for procedure. Thank you. CBO Shipwreck, please.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I just reiterate what our CAO has indicated. Like, the architect really is the person who's going to lead all of those discussions and determine what it is we want. He's going to ask all those questions of staff. He will have consultation with our police chief and staff of the police department, what they're looking for. He will have conversations with council, and he will put all of those items together, as well as, he'll review the site and what's going to work best on that site. And he will put all that information together and come up with, probably 2 or 3 proposals of outlines and designs, and then, present those back to staff and council, and, and then maybe refine which one we think is the best, and then come back with a final design. That's really the process that I think Councillor Hergert is looking for. But he's really the one that we need to hire, that architect. He's the one or she is the one that's going to lead that process.
Yeah, there's a whole timeline and a process for this, and it is with the RFP in terms of council's consideration for approval and having it awarded. And we do have the identification of who staff is suggesting for the RFP, and that there's also opportunity for consultation with our public, and keeping in mind that our council meetings are also public, but that we would do the outreach to our citizens as well. Madam CAO, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And further to Mr. Shiprack's comment, I had the opportunity to do some reference checking on this proponent, and I spoke with one of his references. He's working on a building in the Paris, Ontario area, and he assured me that this firm is very capable and quite open to community consultation. He was quite impressed with the involvement that they afforded the community in that build. So there's a bit of comfort in that information as well.
Thank you. Okay, I do note, Councillor Townsend, I'm not certain your hand is up. Is there clarity?
As Councillor Townsend, yes, I was actually going to say that I'm really pleased that the responses were like 14 different companies, so the RFP must have been pretty clear. Yep. Number one, because you don't get large numbers of respondents if the RFP isn't quality. Number two is the actual report we have in front of us basically says the work's going to start in July. If we start saying to them, wait a minute, we've rethought that, how many of those people will walk away, including the one that we thought was available? And that's one of the concerns I would have. I actually think it's very clear that the design and construction documents, which means to me pre-construction work, will be done as part of this RFP, and that's where we get to comment. That's where we get as council to participate, and therefore we can extend that to the public where and if we decide to do that, whether it's at a council meeting, a special public meeting, etc. But I really do believe if we do not proceed at this point, we could easily lose these respondents, whether it be the one that we favor or any others should they walk away because we deferred. And I don't think that's what we want to do, because that would really delay the project and the building even further. And we all know the condition of the current one.
Okay. Anything further before I go to Councillor Shea?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Shea?
Thank you. It's Councillor Shea. I think I understand a little bit where Councillor Hergert is coming from, and that is that we feel a little bit adrift. But we are early on in the process, and it's a process that we are only partially committing to. So I think that when we engage this particular firm, they will come back to us and they will say, you know, here's what we envision. You know, we've done this community consultation. We've consulted with the police force, with the council, with the municipal staff, with the experts in the community, and this is what we're recommending. And if they say, that our recommendation is that you build a $20 million police station, we can at that point say no. We haven't committed wholeheartedly to this project to the extent that we will not have any further discussion or input beyond approving this today. So I do feel like we should approve this today. But I do have a couple of questions that I would like to put on the table. One is Director Meitens mentioned something about $6 million and something about $5 million, but didn't mention anything about external government funding. So I'm really hoping that some of this might be eligible for funding from other sources. And what I would really like to see, the completion date is later than we had originally expected, or than I had originally expected. So what I would really like to see at our next meeting is, I'd like us to approve this today, by the way, and then I would like to see at our next meeting a schedule of what's going to happen between now and when the project is complete. Not something that we need to micromanage or anything like that. I just want to be able to say to the constituents, here are the points where we are going to be able to have input. You know, early consultation will happen 8 months from now. You know, design feedback will happen 14 months from now. You know, building schedule, you know, and budget compliance meetings will be happening 18 months from now. I'd really like to see, get a sense that we council have our hands on this, that we are controlling this process. Right now, I feel like we're just sort of giving the keys to somebody and saying, go ahead, but that's not really what's happening. And I think we're just a little bit wary because we're in the dark. So I would like to support this today, but I would like more information about the schedule, about the potential from other government funders, and specifically about where there will be consultation with the community, consultation with council, and the various stakeholders.
Good. Thank you for that. CBO shipwreck, that's something you could do in terms of a schedule, in terms of anticipated timelines and what those specific actions will be?
Yes, Madam Mayor, as part of the application, the RFP, all the applicants did submit a timeline and a proposal for, right from day one right to, the end of 2020 when 2022 when construction will be complete. So we can definitely, each individual RFP is different, but once we do choose, if we decide to go with this company, then, we could share that schedule and how that they're proposing the design phase would proceed.
Thank you. And then with regard to funding opportunities, Director Mighton, could you comment, please?
Yes, so it depending on the final design and if it's we're applying for green funding, depending what features of the design may qualify, that may be an option. Several of the proponents as well, in part of their cost management services, did provide grant writing type proposals. So that'll be all something that we'll work through as we get designs developed on what the final plan is. If we can't apply for a green fund if we're not putting something green in it. Like our success probably won't be there, but we'll be looking at all those things as we actually start getting something more tangible that we can use in an application to move forward.
We'll keep a sharp eye out for the funding opportunities, is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Okay, great. Councillor Shea, have you completed your comments at this point?
Yes, I did forward to the CAO an article that I read about the Ontario government looking for shovels-ready projects to re-bolster the economy post-COVID. So we may be in the right place at the right time in an ironic manner. But
I'm going to read that article. Thank you for that, and thank you for forwarding it. Okay, Councillor, first of all, CBO shipwreck, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just would like to answer Councillor Hutchinson's question. I just did a quick review here of some of the buildings. So I don't have addresses or specific locations, but the Municipality of West Nipissing, which isn't overly close, but we do have one in the County of Brant. There's one in Nottawasaga, which is just outside of Alliston. And then the closest one will be in South Spruce, which is right near Kincardine. So the Kincardine one would probably be the closest.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Councillor Hutchinson, did that answer your question?
Yes, that's fine. I just thought maybe it's worthwhile taking a look at one of those buildings when we get to that process.
Very good. Councillor Townsend, please.
Yes, Councillor Townsend, thank you. I too would like to see us move forward. My last comments were just addressing the topic at the table at the time. But I'd also like to pose a question to Director Shaprack as well. Basically, the schedule they've put together is based on the very high level scope, if you will, of the building size and structure. But obviously, once we go through the first phase, which will do the design and the pre-construction documents, and at that point, I think we'll be in a better position to do a full schedule. But was there any consultation considered in the initial design stage with the public, or was this just going to be we would share it publicly if people wanted to look at it?
Director Shipwreck, or sorry, CBO Shipwreck, as I like to refer to you, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just quickly scanning their schedule here. They classify it all in one sort of pre-design services. There was a site investigation and a schematic design phase, which would all be sort of completed by the end of July, which would be a very preliminary, just very, like I said, a very preliminary review of our needs and the site, and then there was some review client program requirements and begin layout and functional program and options, and then start developing schematic design documents, which puts us, close to the middle to the end of August. And then a design review meeting in August, and revisions to schematic design all by the end of August. So that was, the next 2 months were sort of laid out with consultation and schematic design.
So you're anticipating reports back to council. You'll keep us up to date on the process, not to mention that we have already requested of a timeline report, but you'll be keeping this council updated.
Yes, Madam Mayor, for sure we will keep everybody updated, and once we award this RFP, we can have detailed conversations with the design firm and create a more rigid timeline and sort of see what everybody's schedule looks like and how we can, and where and when we can have these meetings, whether it's going to be in person or Zoom, as we have been.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hergert?
Just to drill a little deeper on what CBO Shipwreck said there, is that I didn't hear a specific time for public consultation. I heard there's design review at the beginning. I presume that's with staff and the police service. Is there a public consultation in there where the architect will come listen to the public?
CBO Shipwreck, is that something that within how it's awarded we could have? I anticipate that we would have those dialogues with the architect, and that could be a presentation at council as a delegation. And the Madam Clerk is indicating, nodding her head, but I would like you to verbalize that, please. CBO Shipwreck, what would be the response?
Yeah, that's the wish of council. We can definitely, we will definitely request that from the architect. He doesn't specify on this, overall timeline who he was talking to. He just had it all bunched, classified as one group. But we will definitely, once if the RFP is awarded, we will speak with them and sort of figure out a good time frame to, meet with everybody. And if council wishes to do, whether it's a public meeting or some type of, open forum for public to make their, ask their questions or state, put forward information, then we would definitely can do that.
Well, CBO Shipwreck, I'm wondering if you could just include that in your report back. We've asked for a sort of a timeline and milestones. If you could include where that would fit in for consultation with council, and then obviously council would make the determination, but just in your report back, I think if you wouldn't mind including that.
Definitely can do that.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Hergert, anything further?
Yeah, I'm still not convinced that we have to pay for something when Saugeen Shores said that they would give us what they have. I think that would be a better starting place. So anyway, I've had my opportunity to say that I think that we should be doing our own due diligence about all the stuff that we've invested in prior, reports on from specific groups, specific companies about what it would take for a police building in West Grey with our size, with our force. And I think that's already been done one time. And we've been offered designs from Saugeen Shores. I think that we are actually overusing public money here. I think we should be doing a little more on our own to review what has happened and to make make changes from there, of course, update it and new regulations and so on. But I'm not convinced that it warrants spending another $244,000, especially where we don't have that all accounted for in the police reserves like I believed we had. So if Carrie's mentioning that we had the police reserves at just a $220,000, that is not where I believed it was. I believed that we had been saving $75,000 over 5 years, and that at this point we should have approximately $375,000. So I'm not convinced that that we need to award this at this time, but I've said my bit. Thank you.
CBO Shipwreck, and then I'll go to Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to clarify a couple of items. The total value of this RFP is not just for the design. The total value of this RFP includes the design, but it also includes the project management over the entire course of the build, which is actually quite a bit larger portion of the total fee than the actual design itself. Also, the design in Saugeen Shores does not belong to Saugeen Shores, as also the design for West Grey would not belong to us. The design always belongs with the architect. I just like to make sure everybody's aware of that. So the Saugeen Shores cannot just give us their design. They would have to have the permission of the architect to give us the design, and of course the architect would charge us for that. So that he's not just going to give that design away. So we can't just reuse somebody else's design. So I just like to make that clear as well.
Thanks. And we've got a very good process in place. The RFP is before us. This was the timeline that we've asked for. Councillor Townsend, and then Deputy Mayor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, Councillor Townsend. I was going to give some of the same comments as CBO Shipwreck. The other comment I'd like to make is that the Saugeen Shores, having looked at that unit, is much smaller than the West Grey one, and that could be primarily because of our size of area that we have to police, number one, and potentially in different services. I didn't go down to that level, but I believe they were only doing about 14 or 15 staff, and we're talking 22, 24, perhaps even 30 in the future as we continue to grow. So having the design might give you some ideas, but it certainly wouldn't be one that you could just put the footprint down on the ground. And the other thing is the land we acquired has some, I'll say, variations on it that will dictate where it goes, which may change the shape, it may change in it, and that all has to come into play as well. So with those things in mind, yeah, you might be able to get some hints if you had access to other designs, but it certainly wouldn't be the panacea to our design activity.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Hutchinson. Oh, excuse me, Councillor Townsend, your hand was off. Is there anything further? I took that indication that you were done, but I want to make sure that you have done you have completed speaking.
Yes, I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, Deputy Mayor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. It's Deputy Mayor Hutchinson here. I'm just reading this, and I was just listening to our CBO, and there was a couple of items that I think has got great clarity. A designated project manager, a designated cost consultant to oversee, mitigate cost overruns, as well as outline a commitment in energy, environment considerations, etc. I think the RFP that's out there, staff has gone out and done exactly what we've discussed in prior meetings, and that leads us to here. So the 244, there's a lot more bang than just the initial what we're looking at. We're actually getting a project manager, which a lot of conversation was around that. So I'm going to support what's been brought forward here, simply that we are getting what we asked for. That I think they brought forward everything that we wanted, and it's time to move on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hutchinson, please.
Yeah, Councillor Hutchinson here. Yeah, I'm excited that we're at this point. I think the timing is right. I think a lot of the questions that have come up are going to be answered by our architect and our project manager, and I look forward to having those discussions. So I think we need to move forward. I mean, this has been in the works a long time, and it's timely. So we have a motion on the table. I'd like to call the question.
Okay. Very good. So here's where we're at. We do have the main motion that our clerk has read. It was moved by Councillor Hutchinson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hutchinson. But before we can deal with that main motion, there was a mover for a deferral. There was not a seconder. I'm just asking in terms of procedure, is there a seconder for this deferral? Seeing none, it falls and Madam CAO or Madam Clerk says the motion to defer falls, and now we are dealing with the main motion, which we will have read again. I can say it was moved by Councillor Hutchinson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, and I will have Clerk Scharbeck read the motion.
Through you, Your Worship. Once again, the motion reads, be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby awards RFP 2020-02 for the design, build, project management services for West Grey Police Service Station to Formworks Inc. Architect for the amount of $244,000.
Can I call a recorded vote at this time, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
All right, I'm calling a recorded vote, so Madam Clerk will handle the vote at this point. Yes. So all those in favor, please indicate with a check mark. Those opposed indicate with an X mark. But Madam CAO, or rather Madam Clerk, apologies, Madam Clerk will call the vote.
Okay. Councillor Hamilton.
Councillor Hamilton, yes.
Councillor Hergert.
Councillor Hergert, no.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Councillor Hutchison in favor.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson in favor.
Mayor Robinson.
Mayor Christine Robinson in favor.
Councillor Shea.
Councillor Shea, yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Councillor Townsend in favor.
And that motion carries.
Thank you. Please clear your dashboard. Okay. Let's move on. We have another report. This one is with the Director of Finance and Treasurer. First report is the approval of accounts. So, Director Mighton, your presentation or comments before we go for a motion.
Yes, the only sort of large item that's in the accounts is a portion of the county levy. It is at 89%, which is what our receivables were. This is in line, coincidentally, very close to what our receivables would be at this time last year as well. So there hasn't been a significant decrease. In fact, there was a slight increase in our collection of taxes at this time this year. So the county has asked that we remit to them at least the sort of amount that was collected. So we are at 89% at this point. So that's what's included in our accounts.
Good, thank you for that detail. Madam Clerk, could you read the motion, and then I'd be looking for a mover and seconder, and then questions and comments.
Through you, Your Worship, be it resolved that Council approves voucher number 10-2020 in the amount of $2,369,968.27.
Is there a mover? Councillor Hergert, are you moving this motion?
Councillor Hergert, yes.
Councillor Townsend, are you seconding this motion?
Councillor Townsend, yes, I'm seconding the motion.
Questions or comments? Beginning with Deputy Mayor, do you have a question or comment?
No, thank you, Mayor Robinson. I was just putting a motion or a vote forward, so thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions or comments, members of council? See none? On the motion, all those in favor, please indicate with a check mark. Those opposed, please indicate with an X mark. I will begin. Mayor Christine Robinson, I'm in favor of this motion. Councillor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hutchison in favor.
Councillor Hamilton, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hamilton, yes.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, state your name and how you are voting.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, in favor.
Councillor Shea, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Shea, yes.
Councillor Hergert, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Hergert, yes.
Councillor Townsend, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Townsend, in favor.
Motion carried. We are now moving on to the second report from our Director of Finance and Treasurer, Ontario Transfer Agreement in brackets ICIP, end of brackets, Lance Bridge Replacement Project. Director Mighton, please.
Yes, so the transfer payment agreement is ABALA is being prepared, has been prepared for later in this meeting. So that the report here just gives you a brief summary of some of the dollars involved with that project for that bridge. But if there's any other questions, the agreement is there for approval with the bylaw.
Okay, so for this particular item, there's no motion that we require. And I have an indication from both Director Mighton, but also Clerk Scharbeck. So we're not looking for a motion here, but I'm looking for questions or comments from members of council, beginning with Councillor Hergert.
Yes, thank you. So I have a question. This looks like we're getting federal as well as provincial money. This bridge was scheduled to potentially have a wood, like a wood grant from the company. And I was curious if we have followed up with that and is the grant still available?
Director Mighton, please.
The Lance Bridge was not, it was proposed to be a wood bridge, but it was not under I can't think of the name of the wood grant program. This was under the ICIP program. It is, we did apply for it to be a wood bridge, extending it to a double lane bridge. So it was sort of the safety and the new technology were two of the factors that moved this project forward. But this was not the grant from that wood company. That was Bridge 53, I think it was.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I thought we were still waiting to hear back about the wood bridge, but this is another one that we've been so happy to receive some money. So thank you very much for everyone involved in applying for this grant. And I know that at AMO we had absolutely advocated that West Grey had so many shovel-ready bridge projects, and so hopefully this is just the start of that. Thank you very much.
Councillor Hutchinson, please.
Yeah, Councillor Hutchinson here. Yeah, that was sort of on the same questions along that line. I noticed it was a wooden bridge, and I didn't think this was the wooden bridge that we actually were discussing earlier, where we had a contribution from the manufacturer. I'm wondering if the reason that we got the money in this is because it's sort of a green project. Maybe the government's looking favorably at this and sort of seeing where this goes in terms of bridges. So that's interesting. You know, it's great that we have the money come forward. I don't think we want to deter not receiving this money because we have to repair our bridges. The only concern I have is that if we are going to go to a double wide bridge, some of the residents have said they were concerned with traffic and speed and so on. So we do need to look at that road and doing a bit of an upgrade, especially now that we're putting a gas line beside it. So that's something that we have to keep in mind in terms of managing you know, the road and some upgrades and speed. So, but again, I'm in favor of receiving the money, and it's one less bridge that we're going to have to fix in the future. And I'd be interested to see how many people we do have apply to do this bridge, because I don't think there's a lot of people out there that are building wooden bridges. So it'd be interesting to see where we go with that, and maybe it'll be a start of some other good things in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And just so you know, Chief Martin, our Chief of Police, is here, so he's noted the comments with regard to speeding on that particular traveled road. Then thank you, Councillor Hutchinson. Councillor Shea, then Councillor Townsend.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Robinson. I met with some citizens about upgrading the bridge and how that might impact on upgrading the road and how that road intersects with the main road at the corner. And I think that, it's great that we're upgrading it and expanding it even to a 2-lane bridge. But I do think we have to be conscious that, if like that road has some turns on it, it's not a terribly high quality road to begin with. If we upgrade the road entirely, it will just become a throughfare, and then we'll be having traffic speed complaints. So I think upgrading the bridge is a great idea for for the future and future generations. But I don't think we have to necessarily rush forward and say that the whole road has to be up to the same standard as this new bridge that we've put in. But I'd also like to point out that there's a little bit of confusion amongst council about whether this was a wooden bridge or whether this was a 2-lane bridge. It was a 2-lane bridge replacing a 1-lane bridge. And that's partly due to the fact that we approved the, an application to go forward on this bridge, but we left it up to staff to determine the parameters of that application. So whether it's a steel or wooden bridge, or whether it's 1-lane bridge or 2-lane bridge. So staff made that determination, which is great. That's their job. I appreciate that. But I think as a councillor, I'd really like to be able to be kept more abreast of these sort of operational decisions and advancements that staff are spearheading. I don't want to micromanage again, but I would be really happy if we had some sort of like a central repository of information or something like that, or maybe even just occasional reports or regular reports that would say to us, here's all the grant applications that have gone in, here's how successful they were, here's which ones didn't succeed. And just so that we can be, when we're asked by members of the community, what's the status of a particular project, that we can be as up to speed as possible. So that's just something I'd like to leave as food for thought. I don't know if staff, if the CAO or the Director of Public Works would be able to find a way to make council more informed about these things without necessarily, turning us into micromanagers.
I think that's a really great idea, Councillor Shea. I'm going to suggest that we leave that with Madam CAO, our Director of Finance. We'll leave it with our directors in terms and CAO to come up with the solution, whether it's something that we can have on the intranet or internet. We can figure that out, and I think that's great, just in terms of reporting out on the status of different
I seem to have lost you there, Mayor Robinson.
Councillor Shea, can you hear me?
I can hear, is this Cody?
Yes, this is Cody. It appears as though we have lost Mayor Robinson's audio. We're just trying to get it hooked up on our end. So bear with us one moment.
Okay, we'll just hang tight.
Yes, and again, everyone, just bear with us for a few minutes. We're just cleaning up a little bit of audio here for at the municipal office. So if you just hang tight, we should be back in business momentarily. Thank you.
Test, test.
Oh, good. Good. Thank you, Supervisor Hewitt. Thank you very much, one and all, for being patient. I now have audio. I am not using my headset at this point. I'm just speaking into the microphone directly. So, Councillor Shea, where I left off is I want to say I thought that was a really great idea. We'll work with our CAO and the directors like Director Mighton and Director Sherinsky, where they could put up-to-date information and just status reports on where we are with certain applications, and whether that is through the intranet or internet, we will leave it to them, but they will bring that information forward. Great idea, thank you. Anything
Great.
further, Councillor Shea?
No, great. I'll look forward to receiving that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a plus and an advancement for having that information, so I appreciate it. Councillor Shea, then Councillor Hamilton.
No, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Townsend?
Yes, Councillor Townsend here. Just have 2 points. The first one is I'm glad to see that the comment about what we do off the bridge, meaning the roads and et cetera, how we interface based on residents' feedback and road use will be addressed as subsequent to the actual bridge construction. The other thing I thought it's so good to note, excuse me, is that almost 84% of the cost of the bridge is being funded elsewhere at both the province and the federal levels. And I think that's really amazing that we've got that kind of support. And we should make sure that we give a huge thank you to both levels of government and our reps. But more importantly, I think it's important for the community to realize the kind of support we're getting on the initiatives we're doing as well. Thank you.
Yeah, it's an application that was successful, and that we're getting funding from the 2 other orders of government, and it's infrastructure improvement. There we go. Councillor Townsend, is there anything further?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton, then.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson, Councillor Hamilton, and thank you to staff for having this successful application. This is really great news for West Grey. And as Councillor Shea mentioned, I also met with residents on site at the bridge, just to see that the bridge comes to life when you go there in person and to hear their concerns. And so I was wondering if it hasn't happened already, is there an opportunity for staff to have an on-site visit with the neighborhood? Because certainly as a councillor, I don't have the technical skill to answer questions and concerns that I know staff would have. And I think it would be helpful in the community to have that kind of information.
Yeah, very good question. And Director Sherinsky, you were organizing something. I wonder if you could just provide an update to council.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Yes, I can meet with people in the field if and I have been working on that as well, and have been in contact with residents on that road. So I will further that and meet with them in the field.
Thank you. Further, Councillor Hamilton.
Oh, thanks, Mayor Robinson, and thank you, Director. I think that'll be much appreciated. I appreciate you making that connection. And Director, could you just remind us, I know you said there'd also be an opportunity for public to give input. I think it was during the environmental assessment. Is that correct? Or could you just outline that one more time, please?
Yes, through your worship, through the environmental, the EA process, there will be opportunity for the public to comment, and where public consultation will take place with respect to that bridge.
Okay, thank you, Director. Thank you, Mayor Robinson.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
This is Councillor Townsend again. Speaking of the EA, there was supposed to be, per a presentation at OGRA in February, some adjustments to the EA process that would have made it simpler moving forward. I wonder if the Director can comment on whether or not those went through in April, or if they've been deferred till after the COVID.
Director Sherinsky.
Sorry about that, Your Worship. Just yeah, yes, I can. I'm uncertain whether or not that went through, but I will find out and report back to council if that is okay.
That is okay. We would appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, because that could make a big difference on the effort that is required for the EA as well.
Good. Further, Councillor Townsend?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Anything further from any member of council? Seeing none, now this is one where we're not requiring a motion here. It will be looked at in terms of the proposed bylaw. Okay, so before we go on to the Director of Infrastructure, he has 2 reports. I have a request for a break. So why don't we take a break for 10 minutes, everyone? Thank you. Just need to be. Okay, welcome back. Can everybody hear me? I just want to ensure that my audio, I'm not certain that my audio is working. Is my audio working, Supervisor Hewlett? Thank you very much. Members of council, I just want to ensure everybody's here. If you are here, please use your check mark. I want to ensure that we've got the members of council. We're waiting on, I believe Councillor Shea is the only member of council at this point. Is Councillor Hutchinson's here? Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, do I have confirmation that he is on the line? So Supervisor Hewlett, I'm not hearing your audio. I wonder if you could just mention that. Okay, so at this point, we've got Councillor Shea back. Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, have you joined us? Yes, Deputy Mayor Hutchinson. We're just confirming. Councillor Townsend and Councillor Shea, are you also here, present in this meeting? Thank you for that. So I'm just looking for, yes, Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, are you on the line?
You're unmuted, Tom, if you could respond.
Oh, I apologize. It's Deputy Mayor Hutchinson. I've come back on through the laptop.
Thank you. Okay, so you're on the computer. Okay, we've got all members of council present. Please clear the dashboard. Thank you very much for that break. We are now moving on we're continuing with item 13, staff reports. Now we have the Director of Infrastructure and Public Works. The first item being the West Grey Blue Box program transition. Director Sherinsky, please, by way of a presentation, and then I'd be looking for a motion.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. Essentially, council may recall, with respect to the Blue Box program, in August of 2019, the MOE announced that the largest, most well-known program in Ontario, the Blue Box program, would transition starting January 1st in 2023, and that the ministry is committed to provide a draft Blue Box regulation under the Resource Recovery and Circular Economy Act in the summer of 2020. This will lay out the groundwork for what the new system would look like. So essentially the report that I have here before you, where I have cited language from the AMO website as well, who've been instrumental in this transition as well, whereby essentially our Blue Box program would transition from the municipality to full producer responsibility. This particular program is supposed to be underway between January 1st of 2023 till the end of 2025, and essentially by the end of this transition, municipalities will no longer be recycling using the Blue Box program, and that all recycling will be handled by full producer responsibility. So essentially, what AMO has requested is that municipalities, by way of a resolution, indicate when they would like to transition to become transition their particular program. So I'm not particularly sure if at this moment in time if we have we also have a sample resolution that's attached to my report. However, I have written a resolution that contains all of our information and contains the rationale as to why we would want to transition. Essentially, the recommendation that I'm making is that we transition on essentially day one, January 1st, 2023. The rationale that I have is that I've written is that essentially we do not have, I say we, but West Grey does not have recycling trucks and or a materials recycling facility or a MRF, and does not have heavy capital investments with respect to the Blue Box program. So it's somewhat easier for West Grey to transition because they don't have that to consider. The second part of the rationale is that essentially after the first 5 years of our contract that we currently have with Waste Management, provided that we, it states right in the contract that provided we give them 12 months notice that we can end that contract. So those are the rationales that support the resolution. I'm just trying to think here. I'm just reviewing my notes. And essentially the other rationale is that the province is expecting this to transfer over to full producer responsibility starting in January 2023. So there's a lot here in the report, but that is essentially a high-level executive summary. And so I can answer any questions that anybody has with respect to the report.
Thank you. Detailed report, detailed presentation. Before we go to questions, Madam Clerk, could you read the motion? And then I'd be looking for a mover and seconder, and then we'll deal with questions.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of West Grey hereby confirms our intent to transition out of the Blue Box program into full producer responsibility effective January 1st, 2023.
Thank you. Is there a mover? And am I on audio? Okay, is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Hergert, are you moving this motion?
Councillor Hergert, yes.
Councillor Hutchinson, are you seconding this motion?
Councillor Hutchinson seconds the motion.
Okay, questions or comments beginning with Councillor Shea.
Thank you. Director Szwinski, I don't know if you got my email from earlier this afternoon. I had two points that I wanted to raise regarding this, and so I sent them to you. One was that at the bottom of the model resolution that was proposed, and I know this wasn't in the resolution that was just presented, it indicated that municipalities would be interested in providing collection services to producers should we be able to arrive at a mutually agreeable commercial terms. So I guess we're not looking to engage with the producers to provide that service to them at this time.
Director Szwinski, could you respond?
Certainly, through your worship. The answer to that is no. If we had the capital investment. So if we had a fleet of trucks, if we had a MRF, and if we had those items where we had something to offer and could assist, and some municipalities do have that capacity, so they would be able to do that. But for West Grey, because we don't necessarily have that, and if we were to try to pursue that, it would be through a contract. But the whole purpose of this motion or resolution is to as a sort of a jumping off point as to when we would like to end our recycling program.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that you've been very ambitious in saying that we want to, move forward with it from day one. It did make me think that, like, what this would look like on the ground, and that is that we currently have a relationship with Waste Management Inc., and they do both, garbage and blue box picking up. So if the blue box responsibility shifts to producers, will we now have two pickups? Will we now have two trucks driving around, one which is a waste management truck contracted to the municipality to pick up garbage, and another one which is a waste management truck contracted to the producers to pick up blue box and recycling stuff? If we needed to or ought to have a relationship in the middle of those where we could say, yeah, no, we'll be the intermediary, and the producers can contract us to pick up the blue box materials, and we will contract waste management because we're already contracting waste management to pick up garbage. I didn't know if that was a relationship we wanted to be in, or do we just want to get as far away from blue box and recycling pickup as we possibly can?
My recommendation would be that that we get away from, at the earliest chance, we get away from the blue box program, essentially because that's what the government wants. The provincial government is essentially given that mandate that between 2023 and 2025, we got to select a date and move on not being a part or not administering the blue box program.
Okay. I noticed that in the recommended resolution that was distributed and which was in our agenda packages, that there were a whole pile of whereases. Have they been left out of the resolution that we're going to pass now?
I can appreciate that question. I can include all of those in the resolution, I'm just trying to, and I apologize, Your Worship, members of council, just kind of struggling here a little bit. I'm not exactly sure how the sample resolution got into the agenda. I wrote out a resolution for this particular report, and I apologize for the disorganization of this. So essentially, what I can do is, or we can do is, we can include all of those. And essentially in the red portions of the sample resolution, I've filled all that information in correctly with the right municipality and so forth, and I have provided a rationale with 3 points. And I excluded the clause with providing collection, continuing to provide collection services at a mutual agreement term, and so forth, with contact information if anybody has any wish to contact the municipality. That being said, I look to Your Worship, members of council, and the clerk as to how we would proceed.
Okay. So what I will do is ask the clerk for a comment. We do have a motion on the floor, and moved and seconded based on the recommendation in the staff report. The clerk is looking at the sample resolution right now, so I will have her comment in terms of the status of the motion that we have on the floor and what Councillor Shea, just for clarity, are you looking to have this recommended motion adjusted to the motion before us? Or you just had a question on it?
Yes, so I read all the whereases,
yeah,
and I thought that they were not as powerful as they might be, given that, you know, the actions and directions that the provincial government has taken over the last year or so, or 2 years. So, like it talks about, you know, paper products and packaging products, but in the movement forward with this switch to producer responsibility, the Ontario government has accepted the report that was published called Renewing Blue Box Final Report Blue Box Mediation Process. And that is basically the roadmap to this transition from, you know, municipally run blue box programs to producer supported blue box programs. And so when I was reading the original report and reading the whereases in the sample resolution that was presented to us this evening, I felt it could have been stronger than it is. And so I wanted to include an additional whereas to the effect of, if you'll bear with me for a second, whereas the provincial government accepted the report renewing the Blue Box final report on the Blue Box mediation process, which states Ontario should take strong action to reduce plastic pollution and be a voice for diverse, focused, and coordinated action at both the national and international level. All parties must not lose sight of the fact that packaging is only one part of our plastics problem. So I was hoping that whereas could be added into the resolution that we're going to presumably pass tonight. And okay. I forwarded that to the director, and I can forward that to the clerk as well if necessary.
Thank you, Councillor Shea. I'm going to have the clerk respond in terms of where we're at with the current motion before us and how that would, if it would impact on that sample motion, if you could provide the clarity. So what Councillor Shea is suggesting is that it's actually suggesting that sample motion be the motion, I believe, and he also had a stronger language to include on it. But I wonder if you could, Madam Clerk, talk about the status of the current motion on the floor and also what Councillor Shea is requesting.
Thank you. For you, Your Worship, the motion on the floor right now has been moved and seconded. So it is in the hands of council, and it is basically the to be resolved part of the sample motion that you see attached to the report. So it is simply stating, as it stands now, that our intent is to transition out of the Blue Box program effective January 1st, 2023. So that's the motion that's before council right now and needs to be addressed. So we can do that in a couple of ways. Council can vote on it as it stands and pass it or defeat it. Or you can move an amendment. So you can make a motion and have it seconded to amend this motion by adding the preambles as set out in the sample resolution included in the director's report.
Councillor Shea?
Yes, okay, then I would like to move we amend the motion to include the sole preamble.
Hold on, I've got to write this.
Yep, I can send this to you. That we attach the sole preamble, which is the one that I just read, which is Whereas the provincial government accepted the report, renewing the Blue Box final report on the Blue Box mediation process, which states Ontario should take strong action to reduce plastic pollution and be a voice for decisive, focused, and coordinated action at both the national and international level. All parties must not lose sight of the fact that packaging is only one part of our plastics problem, and then go on to contain the rest of the motion that the director brought forward. So I would like to amend by attaching this whereas to the director's motion.
Okay, so Councillor Shea is, at this point, I'm going to say verbally adding an amendment to the motion. So, Madam Clerk, Councillor Shea has read it into the record. I think at this point I'd be looking to the mover and seconder to see if they are in agreement with it first. Would that be my first approach, or what would you suggest? Okay.
So it's moved
by Councillor Shea. Is there a seconder for Councillor Shea's motion? Amended motion. Councillor Hamilton, are you seconding the amended motion?
Councillor Hamilton, I will second the amended motion.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody need it read again? If so, clear your dashboard, please. And I'm asking if you want the motion read again by, I'm going to say Councillor Shea, put a check mark if you need it read again. If not, then I would just call the question. I'm not seeing anybody needing the amended motion reading again, so I can call the question now. Madam Clerk, all those in favor, please signify. Oh, Councillor Townsend, your hand is up. I want to acknowledge that. Is it a question on the amended motion?
Yes, it is.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. I notice in the draft as well, it also talks about a period of between which we would actually want to transition. And the thing is, I like that, but I also like it because our current contract for the collection of recycling actually ends December 31st, 2024. So I think it would be a good idea to actually put that in so that if we can, we get it to the point that we can stop no later than 2024, having an agreement, and not have to go into 2025 if they push us beyond.
Okay, Councillor Shea, would you be in agreement with that in your motion? Or
Yes, I'm not sure this was my motion, but
is that on the main motion then?
but I thought that was on the main motion, but
Okay.
I do think that the director addressed that in the rationale by saying that we can give a 1-year notice to Waste Management to abort the contract.
Director Shrinsky, could you clarify on the time frame?
Yes, that's correct, through your worship. After 5 years, which I believe would be 2021, we can provide a 12-month notice and cancel the contract with Waste Management.
Madam Clerk, did you need to speak? Or you'll have to have your mic unmuted, please.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, we are currently in the position of having a motion to amend a main motion, moved by Councillor Shea, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Be it resolved that the motion to confirm our intent to transition out of the Blue Box program into full producer responsibility, effective January 1st, 2023, be amended by adding, and that's where we would put in the whereas from Councillor Shea that I believe he emailed me here. So this motion has to be addressed first. Okay. So unless you're amending, somebody's moving to amend the amendment.
Councillor Paxton, you still have the mic.
Thank you. There's two things there. The first one is, I realize we can give a year's notice. However, if the period is actually from January 1, 2023 to December 31st, 2025, that they can pick a date. We're only saying what our preference is. If we put in the fact that we want it by December 31st, 2024 at the latest, because that's when our recycling contract ends, my intent is trying to avoid having to enter into a new agreement, because there won't be any time left on it if in fact it goes beyond the December 2024. The other thing is, I'm wondering whether or not we can actually amend the amending motion through discussion to actually be able to include that time frame, so we don't get on to amending after amending after amending. It just, it gets kind of tedious to do that. And so I'm wondering if we could put that in. Like I said, I'm just trying to avoid having to have a recycling agreement negotiated for after December 31st, 2024.
Sharback, please.
So if the mover and seconder were open to amending that amending motion, then we could include it in there, could we not?
Through you, Your Worship, include changing the date of the main motion? Is that what you're asking, to amend the amending motion?
Right, so it would be between January 1, 2023 and December 31st, 2024, right? Because our recycling agreement ends December 31st, 2024.
I think we have to name a date, was my understanding, but that might be wrong.
Oh my God.
I think if we don't name a date, the province will.
I also think, based on what I read on the Blue Box program, if we name a date, there's no guarantee we will get it. And the problem with that is there's no acknowledgement in the motion we give them that says that we have an end date we prefer, which is when our recycling contract ends.
Okay, so I'm reading off the agenda. So this is, let me just make it, this is the report from Director Shrinsky. It's on the second page, second paragraph. President Jamie McGarvey asked municipal councils to pass resolutions by June 30th, 2020 to identify the preferred program transition date.
Right.
Okay, so Councillor Townsend, is there anything further? Because I would like to make sure that you have everything you need to state. And then I also need to go back to the mover and seconder of the amended motion to see if that's something they'll consider. So first with you, Councillor Townsend, I will go to our mover and seconder, but I do note that Director Shrinsky's there. Anything further, Councillor Townsend?
Yes, if necessary, I would have no objection to changing my request to be that while we want it as soon as possible, we would like it no later than December 31st, 2024, as that's when our contract expires for recycling. Now that you've pointed out what's in the actual document itself, the presentation, and I would like the director's input on that.
He's coming right up now, Councillor. Director Shrinsky, please.
Through your worship, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the contract, because I believe the contract was signed in 2026 or 2016, and it was a 10-year contract. So I'm not certain where the dates are coming from that it ends in 2024. So for further clarification, what I'm going to do is I'll pull up the contract and provide clear dates, if that is okay with your worship and members of council.
So, well, I'm wondering, is that something, and I'm asking, is that, can that be done now? Or do you need time and then this brought forward to committee of the whole, and then ultimately another council meeting. And with that, we need to know, because we do have an amended motion on the floor, and then we have the main motion on the floor. So how are you able to respond, Director? Is that a quick survey of the information, or do you need time?
I'll be able to pull it up from my files if council would just indulge I just need a couple of minutes. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. So Councillor Townsend, we're seeking clarification to your question.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes,
Yep.
I'll go
And
along with what the director says.
Yes, and then during this time, Clerk Sharback, just recap where we're at in the process while we're waiting for a response back from our director, because I don't want just where we're not talking.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. Right now, we have a motion on the floor to amend the main motion. Just wait one moment here. It'll be easier.
May I interject?
Yes, Councillor Shay, what is it?
So I moved the motion to amend. Why don't we just move forward with the motion to amend, and and any discussion of changing dates can be a further motion or not, as necessary.
No, we can't.
We can't?
Thank you for that suggestion, but we will need to get a response from our clerk, please. Through you, Your Worship. The motion to amend the main motion. First of all, here's the main motion. Be it resolved that Council confirm our intent to transition out of the Blue Box program into full producer responsibility effective January 1st, 2023. Councillor Shay moved and Councillor Hamilton seconded a motion to amend that by adding the whereas preamble as previously read by Councillor Shay. At this point in time, we may have a motion coming forward to amend this amending motion to change the date of transition. But the date of transition is noted in that main motion. So it's either January 1st, 2023, or we change it with an amending motion. So I think at this point in time, the director will tell us when the contract ends, because if it ends in 2026, it won't make a difference if we end it January 1st, 2023 or 2024. But we'll have to deal with the amending motion, then the main motion.
Okay. Thank you for that. And we're just waiting on our director for the information. I do note that Councillor Townsend has his hand up.
Yes, thank you. In the past, we have done a friendly amendment to motions that have been made rather than amending. Can we not use that process here if we decide we want to do that?
But you've added a complete additional motion, right? So I wonder if you could explain that. It's not a friendly motion because, or is it? If you could explain.
It's I guess Councillor Shay and Councillor Hamilton could agree to change the amending motion to include the date in there, but it's a very different intent than the original amendment. So it's not changing a little bit of the preamble in the whereas, it's adding a completely new facet to it.
So it's not friendly. It has more information that would preclude it to be an additional motion. Is that?
It would be clearer as an amending motion, but Councillor Shay and Councillor Hamilton could add a date change to their amendment if you chose to go that way with just one amending motion instead of two.
Councillor Shay?
The original motion by the director was all about a date. My amending motion was to attach a preamble. I would like to attach the preamble do that, and then once that is attached or not, then go on to discussing date.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton, do you concur or do you have a different comment?
Mayor Robinson, I agree with Councillor Shea. Thank you.
Thank you. So,
Call the vote on this.
so could we call the vote on this amending motion because it doesn't deal with the date, so we can wait for Councillor Szymanski. So I can call the vote, Madam Clerk.
And then I'm thinking there may be a second amending motion to the main motion.
Okay, hang on a second. Director Szymanski is back. His hand is up. Let's get a response.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll carve away this way. Director Szymanski.
Sorry, can you hear me? Sorry about that.
Yes.
Okay, so essentially with respect to the contract, it started and was signed on July the 1st, 2016. It says in here, the term of the contract, the contract term shall be 10 years. Following 60 days notice and upon mutual agreement by the municipality and the contractor, the contract may be extended as negotiated. Notwithstanding the above, the municipality may terminate the contract after the first 5 years, giving 12 months written notice to the contractor of such intent. The contractor shall not be entitled to any monetary compensation for the work done following the notification period. So if the contract started in 2016, that would mean that by July of 2021, we would be able to or provide 12 months notice, because that would be after the 5 years, which would give us sufficient time to declare our intentions in that respect to honor the date of January 1st, 2023.
Okay, so let's deal with, thank you, Director Szymanski. Councillor Townsend, you have your question asked and responded to. Is there anything further on that, Councillor Townsend?
Yes, but let's clear the amending motion first and then come back to the place.
No, after this, we vote on the main motion.
Right. So I wonder, Clerk Sharbat, could you just explain, we're going to deal with the amending motion. It's not, we have to keep this in order, members of council. We have an amending motion before us. It's not a friendly motion. It's dealing with the preamble. We have it duly moved and seconded. We'll need a vote on that, and then we're going to go to the main motion. But Clerk Sharbat, can you just confirm what I've said, add to it, or confirm, add to it, or if there's something that needs to be addressed further, please respond.
Through your worship, we have an amending motion regarding just adding the preamble to the original main motion. After this amending motion is voted on, the next step is to vote on the main motion. So we can't just keep going back and having new amendments. An amendment to the amendment is, now's the time to amend if you want the date changed, is what I'm saying. So
Okay,
we'll deal with
now, please.
the amendment to the amendment, then the amendment, then the main motion.
Okay.
But we will be voting on the main motion right after this amendment. So the date that's in there will be what council is voting on.
Okay. Okay.
So I wonder if you could walk us through and go through the move by, seconded by, and the motion. And I'll look if there's any further questions or clarity required before I call the vote. And then we'll go through each of those motions then.
Point of order, please. First, Madam
Yes, Councillor Townsend, on your point of order.
Okay, what I don't want to happen is the amendment to be voted on if we have to put an amendment to that before we do it. So when you said you're going to call it, I want to make sure we're doing it correctly, but this is a different process than we've been using.
No, I'm following the procedure that the clerk has set out.
That's fine.
So, and I know the clerk has been addressing this all the way through, but I want to ensure that your point of order is addressed. So,
right. Should we not, before we call the vote on the amending motion on the floor, that I get my chance to say, here's an amendment to that and talk about date, or is it a second amendment to the original for date?
Yes, Councillor Townsend, and that's, the clerk has clarified that, and I'd like her to just address it into the mic, please.
Thank you.
Yes, my microphone is going. Now's the time, from what I'm understanding, and correct me, Councillor Townsend, that you would like to move an amendment to the amendment to add that the date in the main motion be changed from January 1st, 2023 to, sorry, what was the date, January 1st, 2024?
Sorry, I didn't hear the last part. You faded out.
So through you, Your Worship, I just want to clarify, Councillor Townsend, that you're moving an amendment to the amendment. So you would like the amendment to read, so far it includes the preamble from Councillor Shea, and also the second item you would like to add to it is that the date of transition be changed from January 1st, 2023 to, I'm not sure what date.
Right, and that was going to be my point. You're right in structure. I will ask the Director of Public Works and Infrastructure to comment, but I believe it would have to be, if we want to get that 1 year notice, right, to get rid of it, it would then have to be July of 2015, because if we wait till the end of 15, then, which is still within the period the province could pick, then we won't have a year left to be able to give notice. And I don't know what that means to the contract. So that's the complication that comes in. I'm trying to find a date that says no later than, which gives us an opportunity to make sure we don't get stuck with period after the end date that we couldn't get out of.
And
Unless the director, if he understands that, and whether he can comment.
We're just getting Director Shrinsky's mic unmuted.
I believe I understand what, through your worship, I believe I understand what the comment is. However, if our 5 years is up on July the 15th of 2021,
Okay, do you have your answer, Councillor Townsend?
No, I don't, because if the province picks December 31st, 2005, right? Well, we know that in sufficient time to be able to give them the year's notice, or if we transition any time before that, right, we'll still be able to give a year, but we may end up paying for a year, correct?
Director Shrinsky, can you respond to that?
What I'm saying?
Director Shrinsky? Oh, one moment, please.
It appears as though Director Shwinsky may have been kicked out of the meeting or lost internet connection. He is gone from what I can see on my end.
Okay, so we'll watch for him. Madam CAO, do you have a comment with regard to the timing? And then let's, I think we need to, with all clarity, move along with these motions. But Madam CEO, do you have a thought on the time frame?
If I may, Madam Mayor, could I have Councillor Townsend? I thought I heard him say 2005, and I'm not clear on where that date's coming from. Did he mean 2025?
Councillor Townsend?
My understanding is that we can pick a date between January 1st, 2023 and December 31st, 2025. That's my understanding. That's the transition period.
Correct.
But the province is not going to have everybody transition or too many people transition at the same period. And I think it's because the volume of the province even to deal with it, or the suppliers to deal with it. So they could pick a different date for us. So we put our wish in, but not necessarily guaranteed. So depending when they tell us, I realize after 2021, the 5 years is up, so we can put in a year's notice. But when will we know when that is? We won't know when that is, and if they, until the province decides to put it out, and there's no guarantee they'll tell us early enough. So we could be told in the fourth quarter, third quarter of 2025, that's when the date we're going to get. And meanwhile, our contract doesn't end until July 2026. So we could end up paying for that period because we can't give notice.
Right. So thank you for that clarity. And through you, Madam Mayor, my understanding, and I see our director has been able to reconnect, but we are giving a date of our intention. And you're right, Councillor, the province can change that date, but we are not giving notice to our supplier yet. So, and my understanding is we wouldn't give notice until we had the date confirmed from the province, but we could have our director validate or clarify my understanding.
And I guess the question is, do we have a commitment when the province will tell us those dates?
And to that,
go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, thank you, Madam Mayor. And to that, Councillor, I don't have the answer, but I wonder if our director does.
Director Shurinsky, have you rejoined us?
Yes, I apologize, Your Worship. My internet connection failed, and
no worries.
I got disconnected. So the CAO is correct with what she is saying. The purpose of this motion is to provide our intention. The province would have to let us know once they receive everybody's intentions on when they wish to no longer be a part of the Blue Box program. Then I believe the province would have to confirm that with us. We are not the only municipality that is tied up into contracts and so forth. So there isn't a lot written about this right at this moment, and that is a common knowledge as people pursue this with respect to laid out plans. However, that's the purpose of this report and the purpose of the motion.
Okay,
okay, Councillor Townsend.
If council is willing to take the risk and not put another date in, that's fine.
Okay, there we are. So now we've got, and I'm going to have Madam CA, no, not Madam CEO, Madam Clerk, read the amending motion from the mover and seconder, read it, and then I'll call the vote, because I believe we've had a lot of questions, but I'm just going to double check with everyone.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, the amending motion reads, be it resolved that the motion to confirm our intent to transition out of the Blue Box program into full producer responsibility effective January 1st, 2023, be amended by adding the following. And then I have, whereas the provincial government accepted the report renewing the Blue Box, final report on the Blue Box mediation process, which states Ontario should take strong action to reduce plastic pollution and be a voice for decisive, focused, and coordinated action at both the national and international level. All parties must not lose sight of the fact that packaging is only one part of our plastics problem.
All right. That's read. Is there any questions or clarity sought before I call the vote? All right, I'm not seeing any hands. On the motion, on the amending motion, all those in favor, please signify with a check mark. Those opposed, please signify with an X mark. All right, as Mayor Christine Robinson, I'm voting in favor of this motion. Councillor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hutchison, in favor.
Councillor Hamilton, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hamilton, yes.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, in favor.
Councillor Shea, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Shea, yes.
Councillor Herger, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Herger, yes.
Councillor Townsend, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Townsend, yes.
The motion does carry. Madam Clerk, on the next motion, please. But before members of council, please clear your dashboard. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Through you, Your Worship, we are back to the main motion, which now reads, whereas the provincial government accepted the report renewing the Blue Box, final report on the Blue Box mediation process, which states Ontario should take strong action to reduce plastic pollution and be a voice for decisive, focused, and coordinated action at both the national and international level. All parties must not lose sight of the fact that packaging is only one part of our plastics problem. Be it resolved that Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of West Grey hereby confirms our intent to transition out of the Blue Box program into full producer responsibility effective January 1st, 2023.
Questions or comments? Councillor Shea, please.
So Clerk Sharbak, I'd just like to welcome you to West Grey Council once again. And I just wanted to ask you as a point of procedure, so if a motion is made and an amending motion is made and the amending motion passes or fails, does the then original motion have to proceed as is? Is that the last opportunity to make a modification? I'm not wishing to stir the pot here. I think we're going to move forward with this just fine. I'm just curious about your interpretation of procedure. Thank you.
Hi, through you, Your Worship. Yes, so now we've voted on that amending motion. The next step is to vote on the main motion. If the amendment failed, we still go back to vote on the main motion. But you or somebody may want to amend it in a different way or change the amendment enough that it had the favor of council.
Okay, so that is still possible. Okay, thank you. I'm fine.
Good, thank you for your question. So the main motion, and we've had questions. Are there any other questions or comments on it? Okay, seeing none, I will call on the main motion. All those in favor, please signify with a check mark. Those opposed, please signify with an X mark. So I will begin. As Mayor Christine Robinson, I'm voting in favor. Councillor Townsend, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Townsend, in favor.
Councillor Herger, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Herger, yes.
Councillor Shea, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Shea, yes.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, in favor.
Councillor Hamilton, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hamilton, yes.
Councillor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hutchison, in favor.
Thank you. Motion carries. Okay, so we're off the West Grey Blue Box program transition, and we had a tour through our procedural bylaw as well. We are now moving on to single source purchase of sidewalk tractor. Director Shrinsky, this is your report. I'm asking for members of council just to clear their dashboard, and we will move on with your presentation and then go from there. Director Shrinsky. Pardon me?
Hi, Vance.
My
You're
apologies.
unmuted.
My apologies. Sorry about that. I'm having some difficulties with respect to muting this evening. Sorry about that. So essentially, council may recall that during the 2020 capital budget process, they approved the purchase of a trackless sidewalk machine. And essentially, there's only one place to source these machines, and that's essentially from the factory in Cortland. So the purpose of this report is to provide some background and discussion that we essentially have 3 trackless units already. Essentially, the purchase of this machine, which is a refurbished unit, so it is $35,000 less than a brand new one. And also that essentially trackless machines offered to allow us to pay part of the purchase in 2020 and the rest of it in 2021, and that's what I have written in the financial and resource implications. Essentially, we have 3 trackless units right now that we operate. They all have interchangeable attachments and parts and so forth. This particular machine would come with a ribbon blower and would enable the Public Works Department to conduct snow removal operations downtown in a far more efficient manner. And with the addition of this machine, it will also support our winter sidewalk maintenance program. Plans are underway to be able to move that machine to Elmwood as well, so that all sidewalks within the Municipality of West Grey will receive the same type of service and will be serviced by the same type of equipment. And if I would be happy to answer any questions that your members of council may have with respect to this report.
Thank you for that. Clerk Charbeck, could you read the motion? And I'd be looking for a mover and seconder.
Your worship, be it resolved that the Director of Infrastructure and Public Works be authorized to negotiate with Trackless Vehicles Limited for the supply and delivery of one trackless MT57 articulating all-season sidewalk tractor unit with ribbon snowblower attachment.
Is there a mover for this motion?
Councillor Townsend, are you moving this motion?
Councillor Townsend, yes, I'm moving the motion.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, are you seconding this motion?
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, I'll second the motion.
Questions or comments, beginning with Councillor Shea?
Thanks, Director Srinsky. I appreciate how assertively you've been addressing the sidewalk clearing issues that we all considered a priority when we first met you. Do I understand that this particular machine with the snowblower attachment will allow us to clear snow off of downtown streets into an accompanying vehicle of some sort, so that we don't have the big wind drifts or snow banks at the edges of our sidewalks?
Director?
Through your worship, that is correct, Councillor Shea. With this particular piece of equipment, it'll have a longer discharge spout, if you will, and it will enable us to maneuver the windrows in such a fashion that we will be able to use the machine with the ribbon snowblower and blow the snow directly into the back of a truck, a dump truck, as opposed to scooping it up with conventional construction equipment such as a loader or a loader backhoe and loading the truck that way. So yeah.
Okay, that sounds like a great improvement. Thank you.
Councillor Herger, please.
Yes, thank you. Curious about human resources. This doesn't mention anything about, will we be sharing a person? Is this a one whole new person we need for winter? What is the human resource that's going to run this?
Director Schwinski, please.
Thank you. Through your worship, council may recall during the budget process, through our operating budget, council agreed to the hiring of a seasonal operator for the winter time, and that will enable Public Works to be able to get through the additional winter maintenance for those sidewalks.
So it's another seasonal part-time employee, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then this year's budget, we allotted $80,000.
Director Mighton, I wonder if you could just jump in on that. I know Director Schwinski would also respond, but I'm asking you first.
Yes, as indicated in the director's report, we had 80,000. We had budgeted for a lease to own, and the balance of 41,000 on the lease will be paid in 2021.
Director Schwinski, anything further?
No, I don't have anything further, your worship.
Okay, Councillor Hergert, anything further?
Yes, I'm not going to be supporting this. I realize that this is for Ayton. I understand the want and the desire. I also understand that we are committing the $41,000, or in the report it says $43,000 of next year's budget. And I see that we've done that another time in this same meeting. So I'm getting a bit nervous about next year's budget. When we talk about $123,000, which is just the equipment purchase, that's going to be 1% increase on the levy. So I understand and appreciate the time the director has given to this. If we can't find all the money this year, and we sure didn't budget for all the money this year, it should not be a purchase at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Yes, Councillor Townsend, but thank you. I do support the purchase of the equipment. We went through the budget process and approved it, so albeit I don't think we should be declining it now. But as a matter of interest, I did have a question regarding the 12-month usage, Director. I wonder if you could explain an example or two of how we could use it outside of the winter sidewalk use, and would we have to spend more money to be able to use it in the other months other than winter?
Director Schwinski.
Through your worship, and thank you, Councillor, for that question. Essentially, there are a number of attachments that will fit on the MT. Essentially, we do have sweepers, so we do sweep sidewalks and we do sweep intersections and areas like that with those machines. And as well, and to answer the second part of your question, Councillor, that yes, we would have to buy the attachments to fit on the machine. For example, if we were to take on grass cutting and so forth, there are mowers and so forth that would attach to that machine. There are times where you could source out used attachments as well. And so again, they're interchangeable and would enable us to use the machine 12 months of the year.
Anything further, Councillor Townsend?
Yes, just to follow up on that. So it actually is becoming a backup for, say, a mower or something if we ended up having one go down significantly just by leasing a part rather than having to buy a whole new unit.
Through your worship, yes, I could pursue the lease of those attachments and or potentially purchasing one.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that. I was just thinking that it's a good backup plan if in fact a piece of equipment did fail.
Anything further, Councillor?
Nope, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Any other member of council?
All right, on the vote, a check mark if you are in favor, an X mark if you are not in favor. Beginning with myself, Christine Robinson, Mayor, I am voting in favor of this motion. Councillor Townsend, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Townsend, in favor.
Councillor Hergert, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Hergert, no.
Councillor Shea, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Shea, yes.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, state your name and how you are voting.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, in favor.
Councillor Hamilton, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Hamilton, yes.
Councillor Hutchinson, state your name and how you are voting.
Councillor Hutchison, in favor.
Motion carried. We are now moving on to item 14. This is bylaws for first, second, and third reading, beginning with proposed bylaw 45-2020. Madam Clerk, could you read the motion?
Through you, Your Worship. The motion reads, be it resolved that bylaw number 45-2020, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and CAO deputy clerk to enter into an Ontario transfer agreement investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Rural and Northern Stream, between the Municipality of West Grey and Her Majesty the Queen in Right of Ontario, as represented by the Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, for the Lance Bridge, be now read a first, second, and third time, passed and numbered, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the Corporation of the Municipality of West Grey, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Hergert, are you moving this motion?
We'll wait for the unmute.
Councillor Hergert, yes.
Councillor Hutchinson, are you seconding this motion?
Councillor Hutchison, yes.
Questions or comments, members of council? Seeing none, on the vote. All those in favor, please signify with your check mark. If not in favor, with the X mark. I'll begin. Mayor Christine Robinson, I'm in favor of this motion. Councillor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hutchison, in favor.
Councillor Hamilton, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hamilton, yes.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, in favor.
Councillor Shea, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Shea, yes.
Councillor Hergert, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hergert, yes.
Councillor Townsend, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Townsend, in favor.
Motion carried. We're now dealing with proposed bylaw 46-2020. We'll have the motion read. Please clear your dashboards, members of council.
Your Worship, the motion reads, be it resolved that bylaw number 46-2020, being a bylaw to appoint a deputy chief building official and building inspector for the Corporation of the Municipality of West Grey, be now read a first, second, and third time, passed and numbered, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the Corporation of the Municipality of West Grey, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Is there a mover for this motion? Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, are you moving this motion?
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, I'll move the motion.
Councillor Shea, are you seconding this motion?
Councillor Shea, I second the motion.
Okay, questions or comments from members of council? Seeing none, on the motion, all those in favor, please signify with a check mark. Those opposed, please signify with an X mark. I will begin as Mayor Christine Robinson. I'm voting in favor of this motion. Councillor Townsend, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Townsend, in favor.
Councillor Hergert, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hergert, yes.
Councillor Shea, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Shea, yes.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, in favor.
Councillor Hamilton, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hamilton, yes.
Councillor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hutchison, in favor.
The motion does carry. We're now dealing with proposed bylaw 47-2020. Madam Clerk?
Your Worship, the motion reads, be it resolved that bylaw number 47-2020, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of West Grey, be now read a first, second, and third time, passed and numbered, and that the said bylaw be signed by the Mayor and Clerk, sealed with the seal of the Corporation of the Municipality of West Grey, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Townsend, are you moving this motion?
Councillor Townsend, yes, I'm moving the motion.
Councillor Hamilton, are you seconding this motion?
Councillor Hamilton, I second the motion.
Questions or comments, members of council? Seeing none, on this motion, all those in favor, please indicate with a check mark. Opposed, please indicate with an X mark. I will begin. Mayor Christine Robinson, I'm voting in favor of this motion. Councillor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hutchison, in favor.
Councillor Hamilton, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hamilton, yes.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, in favor.
Councillor Shea, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Shea, yes.
Councillor Herger, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Herger, yes.
Councillor Townsend, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Townsend, in favor.
Motion carried. That does complete all of the bylaws. I do want to remind members of council, but those that are tuning in as of 7 p.m., we did deal with bylaw 48-2020 at the beginning of our meetings. So we are now on to item 15, new business. You will recall at the beginning of this meeting, back in the consent agenda, there were two items pulled from our correspondence. Grey Bruce Pride, a flag raising request. Give me a moment, please. I apologize. Grey Bruce flag raising request, as well as the Spruce Ridge Community School graduation banner request. Madam CAO, can you help us through the process?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm afraid I lost a little bit of your request, but I suspect that you're asking me if I'd like to speak to these items.
No, I'm working through our clerk. Maybe I'm just looking. Sorry, I might have thought that in my head and said something else. But what I was looking for is we have under item 15 new business. We have two items pulled from miscellaneous. So I'm just looking for our clerk rather. Thank you. Just to work us through the process by which we can address it. Madam CAO, thanks very much for just straightening up that part of the process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So you said these two items are on the agenda. So it's before council, if you'd like to deal with them with a resolution to approve and put that to the vote, but each one will be dealt with individually as they've been pulled from that consent package, whichever one council would like to deal with first. There's draft motions or recommendations to approve the request in part by Grey Bruce Pride to raise the pride flag I did have some help finding the resolution from last year. Last year, council raised the pride flag for a 2-week period. Just for interest.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I appreciate that. So on the correspondence dealing with the Grey Bruce Pride flag raising request, is there a motion before us in terms of how you wish to address this? Councillor Hamilton, please.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Yes, I'd like to move that the Council of West Grey hereby authorize the raising of the pride flag at the West Grey Municipal Office for a period of 2 weeks beginning June 17th, if staff think that's feasible. Thank you.
Okay, with that, through the clerk, you're suggesting that would work for it. And Madam CAO, time frame, would that work?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we could make that work.
Okay, I'm looking now. We have a mover. Is there a seconder for this motion? Let me see. Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, are you seconding this motion?
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, I'll second the motion.
All right, questions or comments from members of council? Are there any? Seeing none on the motion, we could just call the vote on the motion now. If you're in favor of the motion, please indicate with a check mark. If you're not in favor, please indicate with an X mark. Okay, I will begin. Mayor Christine Robinson, I am voting in favor of this motion. Councillor Townsend, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Townsend, in favor.
Councillor Herger, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Herger, yes.
Councillor Shea, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Shea, yes.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, in favor.
Councillor Hamilton, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hamilton, yes.
Councillor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hutchison, in favor.
Motion does carry. Please clear your dashboards, members of council. I note there's a, okay, Councillor Herger, you have your hand up?
Yes, this did come before council last year and has taken our community a bit by surprise that we are June 16th. And typically, you know, we would action this upon a request. Is there any way in the future that next June we could just put it up for the entire month? And then we have this flag raising policy, and anyone else who would request, you know, different organizations or so on, then we could look at theirs on a case by case. However, we know that this is June when this when the Pride group celebrates. And so I think that we should just make this a perennial thing. This should be a yearly, annual thing until it is moved otherwise.
Yeah, the request did not meet the deadline for our last agenda, so this was the first available agenda as per CAO. Madam CAO, did you want to respond to anything further? The intake for this came a little late, and this was the first available agenda.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. That's exactly correct. And as council will recall, last year we did it for 2 weeks, so we're still able to meet that same pattern this year.
Right. Okay. So we could, there could be a motion before council, if there's a mover and seconder, to address the, you know, put a motion forward to address the, what would be the wording, that the pride flag would be raised every June for 2 weeks, and maybe give the duration of the time frame for it. Anyway, food for thought at this point.
Yeah, I would move that motion right now. That seems realistic. It seems like what our community wants. Let's put it forward.
So we do, I just want to add in, I do see there's a lot of members of, well, 3 anyway, that wish to speak to this. We have a pending draft flag protocol. Madam CAO, I'm wondering if we move something like this forward, is that in any way going to impact, in any way, positive or negative, on the draft flag policy? I'm just looking for some comment to that regard.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm thinking about the flag protocol of our flags. However, we could expand that to include community requests, because it would be nice to formalize that a little bit more. And I know that our new clerk has that on her desk of projects that I will be discussing with her.
Yes, she's just given me a little comment here on confirmation on that. Okay, thank you for that.
Very good.
Councillor Shea? Go ahead, Councillor Shea.
Thank you. So I understand our new protocol will recommend that if an approval has been made by council in a certain year, that approval will be considered valid for the next several years. So I think this will be addressing Councillor Hergert's point directly, but I do appreciate Councillor Hergert's motivation in trying to smooth out and more regularize this process. So thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, Councillor Hutchinson. Yeah, I was just going to suggest that we, in that protocol, maybe we look at something that's going to, if there's going to be a continuous thing, a certain month is designated to a certain event or a certain group, then we just fit that into our protocol. So yeah, I'm in agreement with that.
So address it during our draft when the flag protocol will be presented before us. So we can add perhaps staff can add another section, Madam Clerk, and for council's consideration. Okay, good. We look forward to that report. All right, so I think we're done the first request. The second request is dealing with Spruce Ridge Community School graduation banner request. Is there a path forward on this one in terms of a motion? And I'm looking to, well, there's a question first, Councillor Hergert.
So they're asking that the entrance signs be approved to have a sign on, right? Like they're going to provide the signs and they're just asking for permission. Is that was the essence of the letter that I read?
Yes.
And I would be supportive of that. And I would make a motion that we allow the entryway signs, our sign bylaw that we have for the entryways, that it wouldn't apply for them. And that they could proceed for that. The 2 days, so they wanted a time period. And I would recommend that they be allowed until the end of first week of July. They did ask for some summertime. So that would be like July 4th or 5th would be the ending of the weekend. And first.
A 3-week period? Is that what you're suggesting, Councillor Hergert?
Yes.
As our clerk is suggesting, so I'm putting that request to you, a 3-week period for this? Is that a yes or no?
So, sorry, what was your question? Anything further?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't hear your response to, the clerk is suggesting it be for a 3-week period. Are you in agreement or not?
Absolutely. So that would be starting June 22nd and going until July 11th.
Okay. Councillor Shea, are you seconding this?
Councillor Shea, I second the motion.
Questions or comments from the members of council, beginning with Councillor Hutchinson?
Yeah, Councillor Hutchinson. Do we know any details on the signs? Like at one time I was approached about, they were looking at doing banners with pictures and whatnot. Do you know anything about the sign?
I'm looking to staff at this point, other than I can tell you that it's a display 2 10-by-3 banners that say congratulations.
Sorry, we're not hearing that. There's
I talked on the side rather than directly. Okay, so it's display 2 10-by-3 banners that say congratulations SRCS graduates 2020 at 2 town entrance signs.
Okay, so just to mention that we do have a bylaw that states where banners, things can be in relation to our town signs. So maybe just remind them of that.
We'll work with staff on that. Director Schwinsky, any comment on that?
Through your worship, we will work with that particular group and make sure the signs don't interfere with our signs coming into town.
Okay, very good. Anything further, Councillor Hutchinson?
No, that's good.
Okay, Councillor Hergert then.
Councillor Hutchison left these best wishes for the congrats to the grads of 2020. He left those remarks for me. I'm shocked, the principal. Anyway, best wishes to all the graduates this year. It's such an unusual year, but we are very supportive of all your future dreams. We hope you go to school and you come back and do, work within the community. That's all. Thank you.
Anything further, members of council? On the motion then, all those in favor, please signify with a check mark. Those with an X mark. I'll begin. Christine Robinson, Mayor. I am voting in favor of this motion. Councillor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hutchison, in favor.
Councillor Hamilton, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hamilton, yes.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, in favor.
Councillor Shea, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Shea, yes.
Councillor Hergert, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hergert, yes.
Councillor Townsend, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Townsend, in favor.
Motion carried. Congratulations to all graduates for 2020. All right, let me see now. Is there any other new business? Councillor Hergert.
Yes, so I was reading the minutes of the June 11th, 2020 Committee of the Whole Grey County Committee of the Whole meeting, and in there was an AMO delegation topics, and there was a couple paragraphs. I was hoping that you yourself, Mayor or Deputy Mayor, could bring a discussion at the county level regarding the broadband funding and advocating for the same. I noted that was one of the topics that was up for an AMO delegation.
Yes,
So,
it is. It is, and we'll have further discussion at our next meeting, but it is one of the topics, yes.
Very good. I also noted that there was a new Agriculture Advisory Committee of Grey Council that was formed. And
No, it hasn't been formed yet. I had a notice of motion on it, and it received approval at County Committee of the Whole, County Council Committee of the Whole. It still needs to be ratified at the next council meeting.
So I was curious, do we already have liaisons in place with our Grey County Federation of Agriculture, with our Grey County Farm Safety Committee? Do we already have liaisons in place? And what new would we hope to see out of this Ag Advisory group?
Well, the majority of council supported my notice of motion to create an Agriculture Advisory Committee. And the idea is to have a rural voice at Grey County. It's so that they would be dealing with the politicians. So although I am the representative on Grey Federation of Agriculture, we feel that having a Grey County Advisory Committee would be very instrumental in our connection with our agricultural sector.
I recall a meeting back maybe December. I feel like it was before our budget, but it seemed like Grey County Federation of Ag came to our own West Grey Council and said that they would be supportive. How can we help you? What information do you need? And so I'm just trying to see how this might be different than what we already have.
Well, that was a delegation. This is an advisory committee. Is there a new business item?
So I've heard from several members of the public regarding the federal government's change in gun ownership and so on. And I'm not a member of the gun carrying community, so I haven't received one of these letters that basically a lot of constituents are talking about. I'm curious, what sort of connection have we had through police or through the federal government regarding the gun purchase back or voluntary return that the federal government, basically without democratic oversight and in a pandemic, goes ahead and regulates. Have we had any communication with the federal government?
We're going to have our clerk respond to your inquiry.
Your Worship, my understanding is that the municipal level governments don't have any jurisdiction over this item. It would be an issue between gun owners and the federal government. However, if council's interested in receiving some information as an update on that, we could bring that forward as an information report to a future meeting. But at this point in time, I don't see the municipal levels having any piece of this discussion.
Well, I actually do see us at the local level representing our constituents that have the guns to be the only voice for them to speak up and move that displeasure and absolute disgust about exactly how this process has gone. I know that Minister Blair had been in Durham a year and a half ago. Since then, we haven't heard much. It's been absolute crickets. And now all of a sudden, like I mentioned, during a pandemic, they absolutely go ahead and you know, make it inappropriate for individuals to own certain weapons. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. I'm just saying my job is to represent, and what I hear is not acquiescing. The owners of guns that I'm speaking to are not willing to comply. And so I do feel that this is the most basic level of government, that we do speak for the people that we represent. Our police are going to have to have some sort of involvement along the way, maybe not initially, but I think that this is an issue that definitely affects rural Ontario, and it definitely affects the constituents that we represent.
So, Madam Clerk, you were saying that this was an item of the federal government, not within the jurisdiction of local government. Is that what your comment is?
Your Worship, that's my understanding. If council decided to put forward a statement or comments to the government, bringing forward concerns of local residents, that would involve some work on the staff part, and perhaps CIO Johnson would be able to help us sort that out to move forward with gathering that and see if that really is a concern of the majority, or is that an issue that council wants brought forward for discussion to fine-tune comments to put forward to the next level of government.
Madam CIO, any comments?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Clerk Starbach. I concur with our clerk's recommendation that if council would like us to do some work on this, we can. We would need a direction from council. In the meantime, though, I'm afraid I don't know enough about it. I'm also of the same understanding as our clerk that it hasn't come to this order of government just yet. It's really at the federal level.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Hergert. Is there anything further?
Well, I think that this is something that we need to keep our eye very focused on. I'm not hearing positive, well-received comments about this change at the federal level. So I think that is our job to speak up. I don't know what I would be asking for. What am I asking for? Am I asking that they rescind that? Am I asking that there's a democratic process that everybody can have representation at the federal level when they decide to make such swift changes? You know, I guess I would look for my counterparts, my other council members, to assist in this. And maybe it's something that we don't do anything today. Maybe we have to follow it and get more information before our next meeting.
Okay, Councillor Shea, do you have the floor, the mic is yours, Councillor Shea.
Thank you. Councillor Shea, I'll just respond to that briefly. I'm not sure this is really our purview, and that I was impressed that Minister Blair came to Durham, of all places, to discuss with our citizens before introducing a federal initiative on gun registration, gun control. So I think there has been ample opportunity for citizen input, and I think it would be inappropriate for us to try to usurp federal initiatives on this matter. So I want to make it clear to staff who are hearing these comments that I do not think that we need to take any initiative on this matter at this time.
Thank you. And I would agree. This is a federal level responsibility. Yes, there was an open house or a town hall meeting, if you will, hosted by our former MP, Larry Miller. I was in attendance at that meeting. I feel this is a federal level item. Councillor Townsend, anything further?
Yes, the only request I would have is could we get the clerk and/or CAO just to confirm that it is 100% federal and there is nothing on us, because there seems to be some doubt on that. But
yeah, that's fine.
It's federal, but I just need to make sure 100%.
Clerk will be able to do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anything further? I do see a check mark on Councillor Hutchinson, so I'm going to see if there's anything you need to add in any way to new business.
Sorry, no, nothing
Okay.
here.
Okay, so I'm going to suggest that the clerk could circulate an email on that. If yes, okay, she's good. Yeah, good. Yep, thank you. So that will address that matter. I think we're, I believe we're finished on item 15. I'm looking at the dashboard. Okay. Item 16 was addendum, and we did have that earlier on. Now I'm dealing with item 17. As for all members of council, item 17, notice of motion, direct motion. Is there anything? Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. And I will, I'll forward this motion to our clerk after our meeting so that she has the text. But I believe I'm to read the motion out loud. Is that correct?
Would that be the next meeting or at this meeting? Okay. Got it. Okay. So in lieu of our clerk speaking on this, I will. And what our clerk has just conveyed to me, please go ahead, Councillor Hamilton, and read your notice of motion. If you forward it to our clerk, it will be part of our next consideration of council. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Okay, so whereas West Grey Council condemns the unjust treatment, oppression, and racism of those who identify as Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and whereas Council acknowledges that systemic racism exists and persists in every community and institution in Canada, including West Grey, creating social and economic disparities from education to healthcare, to housing, to employment, and justice. And whereas Council supports the Bruce Grey Poverty Task Force belief that everyone deserves to live free of systemic oppression or racialized violence. And whereas the report by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada contains calls to action, several of which are actionable by local governments, including Call 57, quote, "We call upon federal, provincial, territorial, and municipal governments to provide education to public servants on the history of Aboriginal peoples, including the history and legacy of residential schools, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, treaties and Aboriginal rights, Indigenous law, and Aboriginal Crown relations. This will require skills-based training in intercultural competency, conflict resolution, human rights, and anti-racism," end quote. And whereas Council is committed to anti-racism as demonstrated in the foundation of our 2020 Vision Plan, whereby we set goals to listen to our community, value diverse voices, and build partnerships. Therefore, be it resolved that the Municipality of West Grey will actively work towards anti-racism and anti-oppression at every opportunity, beginning with annual training for council, committee members, and employees for anti-racism, anti-oppression, diversity and inclusion in the history of Aboriginal peoples. And further, that this resolution be circulated to media, lower tier municipalities in Grey and Bruce, Grey County, Bruce County, West Grey Public Library, West Grey Police Services, Grey Bruce Public Health Unit, Blue Water District School Board, and Bruce Grey Catholic District School Board. Thank you, Mayor Robinson.
Thank you. So if you could please forward that on to our clerk, and it will be on our next agenda.
Thank you.
Any further notices of motion, direct motion? Seeing none. Item 18, closed session, incomplete items only. That is an NA. Item 19, matters arising from closed session, incomplete items only, NA. Item 20, question period. Director Hewlett, is there anybody in our audience that has a question?
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Members of the public who wish to participate during the question period can share their name and ask a question by sending a chat message. If you have joined us online, to myself, Cody Hewlett, Recreation Supervisor. The chat box will be located in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen if you have joined us online. Questions will then be placed in sequence in which they're received and read out loud. If you have joined us by telephone and would like to speak, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or alternatively online, you can also press *9. At this time, I am seeing nobody who would wish to speak. However, if we would like to give it a minute.
Yes. Is there anybody at this point? Okay.
I have not received anything.
All right, thank you. Seeing none, we're moving on to item 21, Municipal Act notices. There are none. Item 22 is an adjournment. Madam Clerk, could you please read the motion to adjourn?
To you, Your Worship, the motion is resolved that we hereby adjourn at 10:26 p.m.
Councilor Herbert, are you moving the motion?
Councilor Hergert, yes.
Councilor Townsend, are you seconding this motion?
Councillor Townsend, yes, I'm seconding the motion.
On the motion to adjourn, please signify in affirmative by a check mark. If you're not in favor, with the next mark. Mayor Christine Robinson, I'm in favor of this motion. Councillor Townsend, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Townsend, in favor.
Councillor Hergert, state your name and how you're voting.
Councilor Hergert, yes.
Councillor Shea, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Shea, yes.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, in favor.
Councillor Hamilton, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hamilton, yes.
Councillor Hutchinson, state your name and how you're voting.
Councillor Hutchinson, in favor.
Motion passes. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much, members of council, staff, and citizens. We stand adjourned.